Okay, so we're going to take, we're doing some interviews here for their full planning board member slot is opened. And Mark Cartier's asked if he could go at 6:45, and I think that that's fine. So we'll have Mark come up first for interview before our board. And then Crystal Tenney will go with the 6:50 slot. There you go, so the mic is on. So thank you, we understand we've received our communique from the planning board that there's an opening, and we know there's an opening for full member slot on the planning board. You are an alternate along with Crystal. We just asked you and Crystal to come in, and board members may have questions for you about why you'd like to serve as the full member.
Okay.
On the board, and then later this evening, a name will be placed into nomination, and there'll be a roll call vote to move someone up from an alternate to a full.
Okay.
So if you want to just go over a little bit, you've been on the board for X number of years, and some reasons why you would like to be the...
Yeah, I've probably been on the board for 9 months, maybe a little longer. Recently joined the board to try to understand the town's workings and have an input into development in the town. It's become much more interesting with the bills coming out of the state legislature, 1829 and 1259 or something, 1273. And so the town's going to be going, could potentially have a lot of changes going on in the near future. And I want to try and have an input into what comes out of that.
Members have any questions for Mark? Marianne?
Yes, thank you, and I'll have the same one for you, Crystal. I know the planning board can grant waivers to projects. Can you give me your opinion on waivers in general? Have waivers been granted in the last 9 months while you've been sitting there?
Yeah, waivers have definitely been granted. It appears that when waivers are pretty restricted as to when they can be granted. It's not like anything can be wavered. My impression is if there's a specific ordinance, then they have to meet the ordinance. There's no waiving the ordinance. There may be things, smaller things that can be waived, although even then there's quite a bit of discussion on the board as to whether it should be waived.
Okay, thank you.
Mark, was there a question?
Sure. Hi, Mark, and thanks for your commitment.
Sure, thank you.
What is your understanding of the difference between an alternate?
Trash pickup could happen. Quite a bit of discussion around parking. Those sorts of things. At least some of those were put on as plan notes.
And then lastly, if I could take an...
Sure.
You were involved with the situation with the Wiggly Bridge and their request to expand and that sort of thing. Could you walk us through your participation in that whole process and how you thought through that?
So we sat as a planning board, and when the discussion came up, Mr. Boardman turned to me and said I needed to recuse myself. There was no discussion of that prior to that meeting. There was a statement that I had a conflict of interest because I was in a butter. The conflict, this is another interesting thing that I've discovered, the conflict of interest is strictly financial. So if you have a bias, whether it's being in a butter or things that you may have said in the past, there's you're not required to step away, which I think is a mistake. I think if there's a bias, just like it says with the the other, blanking on the term that I just used. If you have a conflict is only financial. I think there needs to be an ordinance that also lists bias because it doesn't allow, many people could see it as not a fair discussion. That somebody has an interest, not financial, but an interest in what the planning board is going to do or how they're going to rule.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anyone else? Robert?
Yeah, good evening.
Evening.
So could you just refresh my memory? I mean, I agree with you, there's a lot of things happening in the state with housing. Do you have any background in housing? And, okay, you've answered that one.
No.
And then, are there other things you've done in town or other towns that are, served on some sort of committee?
I mean, years ago, I served on the recycling committee. My work situation was different then. When I went off and had my own practice, I had much less time, as well as younger children. So for the number of years I worked, there wasn't anything. Yeah, I mean, I volunteered at the land trust and things like that, but nothing for the town during that time.
Great,
Board members have for you as to why your interest, what interest you have in being elevated to a full board member. So are there any questions from members?
I did prepare a one-page
Sure.
that might answer some of your questions.
ahead,
I was
yeah.
trying to get ahead of it a little bit, if that's okay. Good evening, Select Board. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today and for considering my appointment as a full member of the York Planning Board. My name is Crystal Tenney, and for the past year, I've had the privilege of serving as an alternate member of the York Planning Board. While my role here in York is relatively recent, my experience in municipal planning goes back much further. Prior to shorter-term planning, I think it's important to consider not only where the community is today, but where it may be in 5, 15, or 25 years from now. Communities naturally evolve, and good planning means thinking carefully about that evolution occurs while recognizing the character, resources, and qualities that make York the community that it is. For me, continuing this service as a full member would be an opportunity to give back to the community I care deeply about, having grown up in New York and now raising my family, and to take on a greater role in helping shape its future responsibly. I value the opportunity I've already been given to serve as an alternate, and I would be honored to continue that service as a full voting member, bringing the experiences I have gained over the years while keeping the responsibilities of the board and the best interest of the York community at the center of my service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions from members?
After that, I don't have any.
I do, thank you. And I'll skip the waiver question. You sound pretty complete there in understanding of the do's and don'ts. How does York Planning Board compare to your experience in Sanford? Did Sanford have a lot of commercial projects?
Yes, the Sanford Planning Board was quite busier than the York Planning Board, which has been a really nice adjustment. And they actually have their work sessions scheduled after meeting sessions. So there were meetings every, twice a month. I think it was the first and the third Wednesdays of the month they were scheduled. This has been a nice change of pace, but Sanford is also bigger, popularity-wise, they're a city. So they had to break out their planning board into a design review committee as well. So that's been quite a nice change of pace coming to York because you actually kind of put them together, which has been really neat to be on both and see how that works.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Do you have any questions for the board?
I do not, but I am very curious that there might be 2 opening positions. That was news to me.
I don't know where that came from. So it's under J1 for next board committee appointments, so the vote will
Excellent.
happen later on this evening. And
No, that sounds great. Thank
for
you for your
to be in the
time.
audience or watching at home, waiting
I'm
to see what
going to
happens.
go a couple rows
All
back.
right. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we can go off live, we'll come back in 4 minutes. Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order of the York Select Board here at the York Public Library on Monday, August 10th, 2026. There are agendas on the table up in front if people would like to follow along. And if we go, please rise now for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item on our agenda is consent agenda. There are 2 items there with some subsets. So we have meeting minutes from our July 27th, 2026 meeting and from our August 3rd, 2026 meeting. And there is also a poll permit. Board's pleasure.
I move we accept the consent agenda.
Do we have a second?
Second?
Motion by Marilyn, second by Marla to accept the consent agenda. Any discussion on the motion? Call the vote. Robert?
Mary Ann has something.
Oh, Mary Ann? Pardon me?
There was just a couple typos under D for awards. Dr. McLaughlin's last name was misspelled, and so is Marla Johnson's.
How is that possible?
Oh, yeah.
And that would be it.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Call the vote. Robert?
Yes.
Marilyn?
Yes.
Marla?
Yes.
Mary Ann?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Motion carries 5-0. Just one item to report. I'm not even sure if the manager, he may report on this, but on Friday, this past Friday, this August 7th, Representative Sargent sent a notation out, email out, that the merger with Maine Health and York Hospital was approved at all levels of state government. So the Attorney General signed off on it, as well as DHHS. So now, next steps. We haven't been communicated what next steps are from the ambulance, or from the hospital at this point. And I'm sure there'll be something coming in the future. So good news is, there's going to be a merger. The hospital's going to remain in New York for some time. That's all I had under my report, because most items will be covered under manager.
Well, Mr. Chair, I'm going to speed things up for most people involved here. The 2 items that I have that I've been dedicating the past 2 weeks to, probably half of my time, are on the agenda tonight, so I won't belabor them. I know we're going to have a lot of discussion about the ambulance funding request, and the next item on the agenda is the trash update, so I could roll into that if you would
Just let's go through the on the radar just
like
quickly.
as soon as we finish on the radar. How about that?
So the on the radar, board members? Robert?
Yeah, I guess the only thing I would ask is, so the communication plan for the village project, I know 2 weeks ago when we were here, you said you were working on compiling, I think, a list of the owners and the business owners and the property owners. So where are we on that, Mr. Town Manager?
It's on, I was asked about this last week by other board members as well. So it's on our work plan for this week, and we'll be doing door-to-door knocking on York Street. Everyone in our office has time this week because we've got a few open days. So you'll see town hall staff out doing face-to-face communication, and we're also going to set up an online option for people to email. Actually, I think that's already up and running. I just don't want to publicize it yet until I know it's going to the email address is going to all the right places. So we'll be handing out that info
So this coming week,
this week,
this week?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, thank you.
like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of this week.
All right.
Yep.
Great, thank you.
Who else?
I thought of something earlier today. I think you and I.
The PD update?
Oh, yes, yes. I think it's time for an update from the police department on flock camera usage and results. I think that last time was in February. It feels like it's been 6 months. Is that something that we can add to an upcoming agenda?
Sure. Yep.
And even if there's other items that the police want to communicate to, our board and the citizens, as well as activities that have happened or will be happening in the future. New hires and those kinds of things too. You good? Mary Ann?
Well, what about maybe our discussion on transit seller licenses? To just think about that.
Yep, good suggestion. Anything else? Okay, there are no awards under item D, so we're down to reports. E, which there is one, and it's Casella Trash and Recycling Update.
All right. I'll get up at the podium here to keep in style with how we have everybody do these. So Thank you, board members and public. This is an interesting perspective. Also, I don't want to be sitting in front of the main stars of tonight, which are these toters here that the camera is going to get a look at while I'm up here talking. So I've spent a lot of time over the past week working with Public Works Superintendent Tim DePerio and the staff over at Public Works and our contacts at Casella, so their office staff. They are moving forward, so there's good news on that. We are full speed on this transition right now, but I just want to take a second to back up because we've been getting a lot of questions. I'll say just like the general public who, I know it's a shock to everyone in the room, but not everybody watches what goes on up here and follows us religiously and knows everything that we're doing. So I've been frequently getting the question, interacting with residents, why are we doing this? And just to rewind, 2 years ago, we had a 7-year contract with Casella Waste Systems that expired. So we went out to bid. I know everyone up here knows this, but just for the public, we went out to bid. We received competing proposals. One was from Casella Waste System. The other was from Beacon Waste Services out of New Hampshire, slightly northwest of here. It was the Dover region, I believe. I'm not sure on the town exactly or city. And to refresh, those Casella's bid involved transitioning to automated waste recycling, which is when a truck comes and it picks up the carts in trash and dumps them, it allows one person driving the truck with the joystick to do the work that is now currently done by 2 or more people on the back of our current, they're called rear load trucks. So the trucks that have the compactor in the rear that crushes the waste down and they throw the trash into it every single stop. So the plan, their bid was to move away from that. We also received a bid that continued rear packer service, and that bid was more expensive because it's a more expensive service to operate. And the rough difference between those two were $22 million over a 7-year contract versus $18 million over a 7-year contract. Just to refresh everyone's memory of why the board ultimately decided to go with the Casella service. And a second part of that was not just the manpower, the person power, if you will, to load those trucks and to pick up the trash, but also the waste stream itself. Part of the automated trash system, depending what angle you look at it, it's good and bad, so there's pros and cons, but the waste stream is controlled. So they're using approved containers. They're containerized, they're assigned to individual houses, and they pick up what we know are waste coming from York. So now, the way our system works, you probably all know, everyone that lives in town, you throw a trash bag out and it gets picked up. There is no way for us to know, and it's accepted that part of the waste that we pick up in York, curbside, does not come from York. I do not believe it's a high percentage, but we know that communities around us have pay to throw, where you have to bring the trash to your waste station yourself and pay for it to be thrown away. So towns that don't offer curbside collection around us. There is nothing that is keeping a neighboring town for someone to bring their trash and put it in. I don't believe it's a high percentage. We've never formally studied that, but we have an open waste stream currently. That also has to do with bulky waste. We had an anecdote during this transition process of a piano being loaded, an upright piano weighing close to 400 pounds being loaded into the rear load trash truck and being thrown away. And that means we all paid for it. So that 400 pounds of waste, as it got thrown out at the disposal station, every taxpayer paid for 2 or 3 pounds of it. So, or each house, if you will, half a pound if you got 8,000 stops and. So where does that leave us? So the automated transition date, so moving to the automated cart pickups, is in October of this year. We had originally thought October 5th, the first week in October. What we're hearing now is October 12th, which is the second week in October. There is a little bit of flexibility on that date, so it will be the beginning of October, though, we're told by Casella. These carts will be distributed to each household. I'll get into more detail on the carts, starting at the end of September. So they're expecting approximately 2 weeks before the service date that these carts will be distributed. Okay, so what exactly is going to be distributed? The default cart, one of each, is the center cart right there. That is a 64-gallon container. And every household will receive one. The current color scheme that they're using, this might change, is blue top for recycling, Yeah, you go ahead, play with it, please, yeah. I'd love a little show and tell here. So
Scale.
black top for waste and blue top for recycling, so that everybody understands what's kind of in play here. And I think a lot of people don't understand the size of what's in play here.
There you are.
So a 64-gallon cart, that's a fair amount of waste. You can imagine, depending on what size you use now, what you could put inside there. For people who always use more than that or regularly use more than that, there is an upsize option. And that is a 96-gallon container. And I'm going to take that and turn that in a minute when I'm done here, just so you see how large that is. We have a lot of people that are expressing interest in that, and a lot of people don't understand. Thank you, Marianne. Yeah. A lot of people don't understand just how big that container is. We decided not to put a person in there and have them jump out in the middle of the presentation, but you could easily crouch down inside there, a full-size person. So the default option, which 90% of households find, there you go. Good
job, Vanna.
Marianne could probably get in the second one too, but we won't push our luck here with injuries at the meeting. The average 90% of consumers that Casella sees are dealt with every day, every week with the 64-gallon option. There's another great angle right there. So that is the standard option that is offered. In some places, it's the only option that's offered. In York, we've negotiated that we're going to have upsize and downsize options. All right, that being said, if you feel the need, and I should say that to the right is a 48-gallon toter. I'm going to say everything here is plus or minus 1 to 3 gallons. I think the option that is in consideration for York is a 45-gallon container, but that's very close to the size that it will be. That option is for small spaces, and particularly the request from Casella is, and from the town, is that we've got a lot of seniors, right? So people that might have trouble, they're not hard to operate at all with the tilting action. When they get full, obviously there's a lot of weight that can be sitting inside of that container. But some people have expressed an interest in a 40-gallon to 45-gallon container. So that, and that makes sense. So people who have trouble getting around, we've got some mobility impaired folks, some elderly folks in town that are asking for smaller options. We don't recommend the 45-gallon option unless you have a special consideration, because a lot of times you're not going to have enough room. That's only one giant contractor bag or 3 or 4 kitchen-sized 13-gallon bags. So I currently use for a family of 4 a 44-gallon, and it's not always big enough. So recommend the 64, 65-gallon size for most people. And that's going to be the standard deployment. If you do nothing, you will receive, at the end of September, your house will receive, your unit, your apartment, if you receive municipal trash service, if you're a small unit building or a condo or something like that, will receive 2 of those middle-sized toters, one with the blue top, one with the black top. If you don't want that, here's how you tell us. So if you go to the York Public Works Department page, and I don't have my laptop here with me, but yorkdpw.org, or if you go to the town website, at the top there's a banner that says York DPW News, click here for trash, curbside trash and recycling information. That link is going to take you straight to the DPW front page as well. So York DPW's front page or the town home site has a homepage, has a banner on top of it. In that, there's all the information that I've just said about dates, start dates. There's FAQs that are on a separate clickable page. That's more information than I would ever get correct, so I'm not going to try to give any of that information out. But it's the same page that you folks have been looking up. Everyone in town has been looking up. Where do I recycle this? What do I do with that? How do I handle this? So it's that page on the DPW site. On the front page, there's a paragraph in the middle that says, if you would like to request a different size, click here. That takes you to a web form. The web form will mandatory name, house, street address, number, and unit number. So this is very important because we are only distributing these to legally existing dwellings. So if you have multiple units, so for example, if you have an A and a B or a number 1 and number 2, if you have a duplex, a triplex, make sure you put the unit number. So we need to see that. Address, number, and street number and unit number. And you will get, if you're on that list before a week from this Friday, so 12 days from now, you will receive, the initial drop will be the size that you request. If you do not get back to us by 2 weeks or a week from this Friday. Doesn't mean you can't request the sizing, but those will be ordered in a second run slightly after we start service. So you will automatically get the 64. And according to our partners at Casella, that's good for 90% of people. Even when people think that that's too big or too small, most people either can deal with it or it's big enough, and they realize that. So that's why they default to that size. But if that really bothers you and you're concerned about it, you can go on right now, as many of us have, or some of us have, and click on a different size and get that delivered at the start of service. All right, am I clear on how cart sizes? Do we need to belabor that? A few other pieces of information. We've been asked, I thought it was actually a good question that we hadn't really talked about, and I'll probably skip it on the write-in because it was a question to the write-in to the board about how long these carts are good for, because that's actually something we haven't communicated out to people. The contract goes for 5 more years. So those carts will be in use by Casella for 5 years, or a replacement cart if your cart is damaged or breaks or the truck runs it over. Casella does all of those, handles all of the cart management on our behalf, and that's what they charge us for, our monthly bill, the town. So these will be your carts for the next 5 years if you use the municipal curbside system. People have asked, well, should I hold on to my old cart? I'm not going to give an answer to that because that's a personal choice. There is a small probability in the future that you may need a curbside cart 5 or 6 years from now. Any automated company that we go to, whether we continue with Casella or go to a larger player, Waste Management is another one that most people see around that uses an identical system in most of their markets. All of those systems, the service deliverer typically provides the cart and manages that service for the municipality. So we don't expect that you will need a cart in the future, but some people may choose, some people are preppers and may want to hold on to their trash cart that's done them years and years of service. You're allowed to do that. The other side of that coin, what do I do? Mr. Frederick's question, what do I do with that he's been asking for a year and a half? What do I do with my cart when I'm done with it? Because, mine's got holes all in it, it's all beat up, mine personal one. The town will be offering cart disposal dates for that, and it's going to be open containers, and it'll probably be at Witch Trot. We're working through the logistics on that within a month to 2, hopefully, after we start this process. So stay tuned. We'll announce those exact dates. We may need to do a couple of them if there's high interest, which there probably will be. If you have carts. The other alternative is if the cart is, whatever you're using, barrel or cart, fits inside a 64-gallon, or you can make it fit inside a 64-gallon. There is no problem with 4 pieces and putting the quarters inside of that, as long as it doesn't bind up inside of your existing cart and it's going to go into the waste stream. So either way, if you can put it in your automated collection, it's going to end up in the same waste stream as if we put it in a dumpster that we haul off from the Witch Trot facility. And we are going to have public info meetings. Casella did not have a date yet. We are targeting the end of August and mid of September for 2 public information sessions, hopefully in this room. So we're trying to lock down a date with room availability, and we are looking to broadcast it as well, or at least record it so it's available for playback. Public information meetings prior to the start with much more information than I just provided with Casella service reps. They'd actually be running the meeting here in this room within the next 1 to 2 months. So we will announce those as we schedule them. We were trying to get one locked down for mid-September today to announce it, but we couldn't get the room and Casella lined up at the same place in the same time. So we'll do that shortly. And just as an update, about 750, prior to coming over here, about 750 residents, or I should say residences, had signed up on the website for a different cart size. Some of those were selecting 64, 65-gallon sizes. You don't need to go on the website if you just want the standard issue, standard offer one. You don't have to do anything, you'll get that, but about 150 people had clicked on 65-gallon and selected that size. So the number is more like 600 out of 8,000 residences that we serve have already signed up and given us a preference for something different. So thank you to everyone that's paying attention. I know that that's been out there on social media. It's been out there on email from Public Works, on blast, and about 10% of, exactly 10% of residences have taken us up on that. So,
Any questions for Peter?
Just to follow up, we did receive a couple emails to the board of one neighborhood that still was having hiccups, and I know you were working on that, and then there was a gentleman who had some ambulatory issues, and there might be others. Are those issues being resolved? And
Both of those are under review right now.
Thank you.
The neighborhood, we think they're going to be able to get service, but there's some landscaping that's going to need to be done, so that's going to be worked out between Casella and the homeowner. It's hedges and trees that are in a tight curve, and they can't do it without taking out landscaping, so they want to make sure the homeowners know why they're not included on the list and that there's an option to correct that. So they're going to have some communication facilitated by us. Now that we have a sample size, we didn't have that, that's a 48, but I'm also going to work on getting people who have concern. It's not just, we've had, I think, 2 or 3 individuals who have reached out that said, hey, I can manage my current cart barrel, which is 30 to 40 gallons on wheels. Am I going to be able to use the new one? So I'd love to have that available and actually have that brought to them to see if it's something they can handle. So we'll communicate with them directly, or have them come into the town hall if they're able and see, maybe we can put a couple loaded bags in it to see how easy it is for people to use. So, and then if they can't, there are options that we'll explore with them for alternative service.
Anyone else? So you've said it at prior meetings, when the carts are dropped off at the residences, the Casella's placing them where they want them placed at collection day? Does that still stand?
So they will be leaving them where they want them placed. So the first 2 weeks, maybe more, but definitely 2 weeks, there's a fly truck that goes with the collection truck. And that truck is positioning them, the truck, they're going to essentially work the placement through in the field as they go. So they have a rough idea of everything. Truck's going to collect, and then it's really not it's a follow truck. Yeah. The follow truck is going to leave them lined up as close to their house, as close to the service area as is
It's
practical.
after that first collection.
It's the first collection. And they're going to do that again for the second week. We're told maybe on the third week, but I would say definitely for the first 2 weeks. And that gets 95% of the placement issues. So people watch where they're left. So unless, somebody comes by and hits all your carts or, I guess maybe if it's a high wind day or if there's like a tropical storm or something, we might need to reschedule it for a couple weeks out. But that's the first few services. That's where they're going to show you. And that's important because the range of motion for the truck, it doesn't have unlimited range of motion. It's mechanical and it goes out, grabs the cart and lifts it up. For loading, obviously bagged trash is preferred. And that is because it needs to slide out easily. And the same consideration with recyclables. So if you have individual containers and things like that, that's great. But if you use cardboard, you got to make sure that it will flow out because it's the weight of the trash, which generally tends to be heavier, and the weight of the recycling is what just straight gravity pulls it down. So one of the things you need to watch out for this is cardboard. If you take cardboard and cram it into the top, you got to make sure it doesn't hang up on the way out. So they'll try and they can, bob it and try to generate some force dropping it, but they, sometimes stuff can get stuck in there. So that's just a learning process. And then stackage, strong preference is that it fits with the container top closed or mostly closed. The concern is that it's picked up. So if you pile it out and it's outside of the lip of if you don't have, if the lid is up, but it's within the lip, that's one thing. If you are above the lid and outside of the lip of the trash, if you just have bags stacked on top, they're gonna fall off. And there is not a follow, after the first couple weeks, there's not a follow truck. So they need to be contained within the lip of that container. So when it dumps them, they don't go all over the road. But that's like any trash container.
Anyone else? So your DPW superintendent director, leader, he's watching. He just
watching.
texted me. The initial drop-off of the carts will be in the residence driveway.
Perfect. So he's got new information that I did not have. Like I said,
in.
I've been talking all week, so that's great.
Great, thank you, Peter.
Yep. And there was some talk about, I know, concern about are they going to leave them at the end of the road or where they're going to leave them. So they're going to hit houses. Yep.
Good. Great, thank you.
Questions?
I don't think so.
All right. Thank you.
Citizens
Oh, yeah.
Forum is next.
Yep, citizens forum is this a question about trash?
Yeah, how often do the bins get replaced on average? So you can track if one gets damaged or is it all
Just want to repeat, summarize that question.
Yeah,
Peter,
so
if you
for those at home, the question is how frequently do they get replaced? So essentially, can we run statistics on, York versus other places and replacement? I don't know the answer to that question. I do know that the management of them and the replacement, so what they've told us is that most of the damage comes from their operators. So either hitting the cart or damaging it when they clamp it. So they know when, think about the lid flapping, if they see the lid come off, if they see a broken wheel. So it's just the customer service number for Casella. If you call them, they will come, they'll swap it out. I'm sure they've got a stockpile and they can try to repair and put the one back in service. I don't know, they are serialed, but they've told us that that's just once they're tracked, they know where they go, but there's no follow-up with the serial number to see if it stays at a house or how long it stays in service. But we will get, I'm sure, kind of lost numbers, because if all of a sudden there's 500 of the 10,000 carts go missing in York in the same week, I think they're going to want to let us know that, and there'll be some conversations about whose responsibility that is, whether it's theft or something like that. So
Thank you.
happy to answer any other questions.
Another one.
Yeah, for someone who doesn't have access to the internet or isn't sort of able to manage
Yep.
that, what's the mechanism that they can make those requests?
So the question was for somebody who doesn't have good access to the internet or isn't able to access, doesn't want to use the internet, how can they handle those requests? If you fall into that category, which I hope is a small percentage, I hope I'm not going to overwhelm the staff with this, but I would suggest calling the Public Works office. There's one person there, so let's just be a little, try to be judicious on that. But if you need help, the Casella customer service line will be the main contact, so it will not be the Public Works Department once the system is deployed. But if there are questions, need to talk louder, is that okay. If there are questions about implementation or how to get in touch with the right people at Casella or do the forms or something like that, you can call the Public Works office and they'll hopefully be able to handle that. And I hope that Tim isn't watching at home and texting you and telling me he's going to
He
throttle me
just
tomorrow.
gave me the phone number.
Oh,
We do
great.
know it.
So there we go. See, we are a functioning communicating agency once in a while, so I like to see that.
363-1010.
Okay. So 363-1010 if you need to call the Public Works office. That's the easy way to do this is going to be online, but if you do need help, feel free to call them.
And online, the library can always help you do it online.
Oh, yep, great point. Library too for assistance for using, if you are not an internet user for whatever reason and you want to become one and want, a little assistance on that. They do a good job, I know, in tutoring. Is that the right kind of idea? But, helping people learn how to do things online. So good resource.
So I really had a question, which is, did you say we're taking our old trash cans to which truck, or that's how it's gonna work?
We think, yes. That's the current answer, yes. If that changes, we'll communicate that. So.
And there's none of those kinds of things that are recyclable? I mean, I think of Rubbermaid. Rubbermaid trash cans seems like they're a recyclable item, but maybe not. I don't know.
We can look at that, yeah, because that is a lot of plastic waste. I just don't know how clean it has to be or how they could sort it. So, good question.
Yes, sir. Trash question?
Mr. Manager, what about food waste? Food waste is inimical to a clean operation of any kind. Imagine this operation in the week after Thanksgiving or any other pick your time. Are there any long-range plans to get food out of the waste stream?
We've had a lot of conversations about it, and I know we've got I thought we had some members of the recycling committee in-house that, I'm not going to call them up to ask about it, but I know that composting is one of the things that they've been looking at. We don't have a program yet, but they've been talking with the board about that in recent years. So, no, I would say no, there's not a current curbside composting program, but it's certainly something that's been suggested, so worth keeping in mind and considering.
For Mr. Fox.
Private curbside composting does exist, but I know there's been talks about starting, municipal composting is an option, so. But we do not have that currently to answer the question.
There are certain areas that Mr. Fox does not service. So it is not, yeah, it's a peeve of mine, but, so they don't service townwide, so it's limited. So I think the town should definitely look into something.
Okay.
Any other trash recycling questions from members of the audience? All right, thank you for the questions. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, folks. Thank you, everyone.
So we're down to item F, Citizens Forum. Citizens Forum is open to any member of the audience for comments on any town matter. All comments should be respectful in tone and should be directed to the chair. Comments should be brief and to the point, and members of the public shall refrain from making personal charges or disparaging remarks or form verbal attacks upon the character or motives of town members, of town boards and committees or commissions, of town staff, or other citizens of York. Questions that require extended answers or that cannot be readily answered at our meeting this evening will be referred to the town manager for follow-up. The board will also receive input received via the Select Board's online webpage, in which there are, I think there are 4 or 5, and some were already discussed. And anyone who wishes to submit a written request for future agenda item can do so on the form available at this meeting, or can also obtain said form through the town manager's office. So in the audience, we do have some public hearings on different ordinance amendments that are right after, the public hearings are right after Citizens Forum. So how many folks are here for Citizens Forum? I see a couple hands, so we'll start in the back. I'll just go right around to the left. So there's 3, and then we'll move into the public hearing portion of our agenda.
Am I in the back?
Yes. Oh, you're the back.
Don't worry about all this stuff.
Hi there. Michael Modern, 9 Old East Situate Road, York, Maine. I'm trying to utilize my, got the wrong thing here. Trying to use my pad, but I do have a paper copy if I need it. Just because, you know, you're supposed to, it's good for your brain to keep working. I am going to talk briefly, I hope, about short-term rentals. Before I say that, we have family in Minnesota, Minneapolis, and St. Paul, and they have curbside composting. Nice, cute green bucket that looks just about that size, only a little smaller, and it, you know, they pick it up with the recycling and the trash all in the same thing. So that's a good thing to note. Okay, I've been following the reporting and discussions concerning short-term rentals ever since it became a thing, as they say, including attending some concerned citizens meeting as an unofficial representative from west of the highway. I've asked this question in various ways previously and has not been adequately clarified for me. My understanding is that the ordinance does make a distinction between owner-occupied short-term rental units of maybe 1 or 2 rooms or units and property management units where people or corporations are buying up seacoast residences and turning them into multiple units managed remotely. I'm asking for clarification as to whether, for some legal reason, applicable ordinances need to be written to be applied equally to these 2 clearly distinct categories. I suggest it would make sense to treat them separately, with owner-occupied short-term rentals as one category and multi-unit short-term rentals managed remotely or by a corporate or property management entity as another, more akin to a motel, a hotel, an inn, or other commercial enterprise. And that's it for me. I can give you a paper copy of what I said. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, we saw a hand in the back. Yes, sir.
Sure can, Mike. Thank you.
Hello, Alex Vedek, 30 Century Hill. Hello and good evening. Some brief news around the world and a short warning about the future of our country and the way oil has been weaponized globally. The U.S.-Iran negotiations have halted as of today, according to a position from Tehran. The negotiations are not resuming until Washington ends its violations of the Memorandum of Understanding and compensates Iran for commitments that it has breached. It will continue to exchange messages through intermediaries. Unfortunately, this is the state of global U.S. relations. Our own military power is unable to recognize its failures and aggression. Within the Department of Justice, Todd Blanche, Trump's personal defense attorney, has now been confirmed as the Attorney General of the United States. The U.S. strategic petroleum reserves have dropped below 300 million barrels for the first time since January 1983, the lowest level in over 40 years. Greenland has issued warnings against Trump U.S. oil and connected firms preparing to drill within its territory. White-collar crime is at an all-time high. The Trump family net worth is in excess of $6 billion, rising 25% from 2025. For the record, that's over 1,000 millions of dollars. This is an increase of over 5 times since the early 2000s. I don't know how that compares to your own personal portfolios, but hopefully you're doing fine. Trump family has heavily invested in defense contracts, which is a conflict of interest at the very least for a sitting president. According to some figures, adjusting for inflation, George Washington was the next richest president at an equivalent of $500 million today versus Trump's $6 billion. The runner-up is Bill Clinton at $250 million, who happens to be the same age as Trump. Then some other aspects is that I encourage people to be more cognizant of what they're actually voting for in the elections. We have seen a great erosion of our public systems, our social safety nets, and obviously our own portfolios have not matched these exorbitant amounts in comparison to the people holding office. It is the responsibility of voters to know the truth, and a responsibility that has been abandoned by the mainstream media outlets. The world is not a violent place. We, the people, provide permission for our governments to pursue aggression by turning a blind eye and remaining ignorant. As far as current efforts, we should be cognizant of the control that the corporations pursuing data centers, AI, and technology have in store for us. They are not designed to help humans. They are actually burning our future resources and burning our chances of upward social status. There is a reason that we are the only Western nation without a universal healthcare system. There is a reason we let the middlemen profit millions instead of bundling it under tax dollars. Just things for you to consider. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you, James.
Thank you.
James Kansas, 280 York Street, Citizen. A vista of destruction as far as the eye can see. And an even closer look reveals yet more destruction. What should be genuinely troubling to all of us, there may be even more destruction that so far remains below the surface. That is the dubious legacy of this administration. Not arches, not ballrooms, not Washington, D.C. reconfigured. These people break things, and they do so being entirely ignorant of the consequences. They break departments, agencies, policies, traditions, and norms. They break careers. They break lives, millions of lives, not only here in the United States, but throughout the globe. USAID was among their first casualties, and it matters little to them just what the destruction has yielded. Starvation, disease, malnutrition. They are indifferent to the harm they cause, are quick to dismiss the charges against them for negligence as fake news or a hoax. Again, consider for a moment what has happened to environmental protection during their tenure. To have a government agency endowed with the title Environmental Protection Agency is not only inappropriate but ludicrous, because the agency exists now to execute the very opposite of what the title states. Here we are in 2026, amid numerous warning signs of an ever-worsening climate crisis, and the grotesque cartoons in our government are promoting fossil fuels, beautiful coal, natural gas, and petroleum, extracted from what should be protected public lands and refuges. The world community moves towards alternative energy sources, while the occupant of the gold-festooned Oval Office tells everyone that he knows better. He always knows better. I'm reminded of a scene from the 1970s disaster film, Poseidon Adventure, when the group of individuals who will survive encounter another group who are going in the wrong direction, and we know ultimately to their doom. That unfortunate group, of course, is us, a nation being led to its doom by an arrogant, self-absorbed buffoon, surrounded by a gang of inept, opportunistic miscreants who seem to grow uglier, more grotesque with every passing day. All of them, just like the gold-obsessed leader who is their inspiration, are fixated upon breaking things, and what at one time was a respected global power is strewn with the wreckage of their dangerous actions. They break things, but they lack the intelligence, creativity, imagination, basic decency, respect for the rule of law, the Constitution, all the positive attributes should be essential for those in authority. What is broken remains broken and is not replaced with anything likely to endure. No, the reflecting pool was not damaged by vandals, and the several persons accused of the crime have been cleared due to lack of evidence. All of us should know after a year and a half who the vandals really are. Thank you.
You want to do the portal?
Right. I try to keep a straight face on these, but
Some of you addressed from the podium earlier.
I might crack at the last line on this one. Kevin McKinney from York writes in, I would like the Select Board to vote on proper handling of the Boston Post cane. The Senior Council is awarding the cane on a yearly basis to an old person who usually is not the oldest person in town. This is not the way the tradition is supposed to be handled when the town was given cane in 1909. It goes to the oldest person and stays with that person until he or she dies. We are the only town out of 500-plus towns in New England that are doing this. Families are getting upset, like one family member told me, oldest means oldest, period. The Senior Council has no business breaking a New England tradition, and by the way, I am the only one that has a list of most of the holders, or many anyway. These names need small plaque in Town Hall on mahogany board like Kittery does in many other towns. If I croak, get names out of my phone notes. Thank you, Kevin McKinney. That's going to be the best one I think I've read since I've been here. So thank you, Kevin. And now on to serious things. Erin Gorham from York writes, I took my 3 young children to library story time as we do every week, and unless it's raining, we walk from my parents' home behind the old ice house. Not a far distance at all. If you've walked the village, you know the condition of the sidewalk and frankly dangerous crosswalks. We left the library and headed home. My oldest, 4 years old, was biking. They are aware of the rules of the road and waited for me to give the okay to cross. My youngest 2 were in a stroller wagon. We stopped at the crosswalk. I looked both ways and a car gave us an indication to cross. I checked the incoming traffic to the left and no cars. Perfect. I gave my kids the okay to cross. My oldest pushed the bike not 2 steps in front of me when I noticed a car coming straight at us, looking over their shoulder, yielding to oncoming traffic, then pressing the gas to continue on when he noticed us. I screamed stop and tried to yank my daughter out of the way. Thankfully, the driver locked up his tires and was able to stop without injuring any of us. The story could have ended very differently. I was not a negligent parent. My children did not book out into the road. To be completely honest, it wasn't the driver's fault entirely, it's the way the road is designed. This is almost a completely blind crosswalk, so I called the police asking them to shut down the crosswalk. I see this exact thing happen all the time in this exact spot, yet nothing is done. No flashing pedestrian lights, no temporary signage, nothing. I've hit dead end after dead end trying to find where accountability falls and where answers can be found, temporary or permanent. I was told to wait until the village revitalization project is completed. Well, when? This has been ongoing for years. There have been no solutions offered to our immediate problems here in the village. This is hazardous and frankly could be a violation of the American with Disabilities Act. Second right, in continuation of the previous form, I'm asking the town board to come up with a temporary provision to either close the crosswalk, put up temporary signage to alert drivers that there is a crosswalk, or in an effort of good faith, move the sidewalk to where it is planned for the village revitalization. Tammy Muller writes, from York writes, this afternoon I'm going to clean up a big mound of dog-filled poop bags that has been growing each day right at the beginning of the boardwalk to Wiggly Bridge. I don't know who enforces litter laws at Wiggly Bridge, anyone. I don't understand why there is no longer a trash can across the street except for the fact that it overflowed when there was one. I think the town must recognize that tourists are going to come and leave trash, especially bags of dog poop, so we should provide trash containers that are emptied on a regular basis. I'm a dog owner. My property butts the Smelt Brook, and it makes me sick to think of how much pollution could go into the river from all the litter. The problem of litter does not go away just because there's not a waste collector. As the saying goes, ... happens. That was referred to the police department, to the animal control officer who's going to be doing a report on that, getting back to me and doing some enforcement action, because that was a pretty significant, there were actually 3 people that came into the office, not just the person who wrote in here, so that weekend was rough. Julie Edminster from York writes in, I was on my usual 90-minute walk along Long Sands Beach toward the lighthouse today when I came across a brown paper bag of trash that had spilled open on the sidewalk. A swarm of seagulls was already dragging pieces of it onto the beach, plastic water bottles and all. I stopped and cleaned it up. Then I walked nearly a mile before I could find a trash can. When I finally put it in a local business dumpster, I got dirty looks for doing so. Enough is enough. The town needs trash cans at the beach and regular pickup to empty them. We know people can be lazy and leave their mess behind. I was the only one who stopped to deal with this one. But if we provide the infrastructure that every other tourist town manages to have, we can actually keep the beach clean. Sincerely, Julie Edminster. Jenny Moquin from York writes in, good evening, board. I have a question. So this is the, so I answered, this is just the question about how long the Casella will be. I'll save that one. I answered that in the presentation. Okay, Jenny Moquin writes in, yep, it's Jenny again. Sorry if I forgot to add to my previous questions for an unrelated topic. Where would someone find info regarding how adjustments were or are being made for budget articles that didn't pass? Example, the Center for Active Living, Adult Education, York High School Auditorium, just to name a few. Thanks, Jenna Lee. That's a good question. We should probably talk about having, I can present at a future meeting what those adjustments were, because we did make some. I can only speak to the town ones, not the school ones, though. Okay, and Jenna Lee Moquin writes in, yes, it's me again. Sorry, I don't have all my thoughts down on one submitted form, but stuff just happens, and then I think of something new. Could you point me in the direction or provide me with the info for how much the Parks and Rec budget was lowered when the carry-in, carry-out policy started at the beach, I believe in 2020? I know that the trash collection and disposal budget was huge previously, just wondering where that money went in the budget. I don't off the top of my head, but I can research and email it back. Do we have any new ones, Mr. Chair?
Let me check here. Yeah, 2 more came in.
All right. I can read them off live if I pull them up.
One was the Town Hall Streams is not working.
Have we switched to YouTube?
Moquin. And the other is Town Hall Streams is not working, but YouTube is working. Janet Lee Moquin.
Yep, so for anybody, this isn't going to help because if they're watching, they can't watch on Town Hall Streams, but we are, public can hear this, we got a lot of people in the room. So we're transitioning from Town Hall Streams to YouTube, the governmental channel. So we are streaming everything and recording everything live
on YouTube. Town Hall Streams is still up for the back record, but our choice for broadcasting, live broadcast moving forward is going to be YouTube because of the quality, the way that the user interface works, also real-time closed captioning, which we don't have that option on Town Hall Stream, so it actually makes the live stream accessible if you use YouTube and let me just make sure I get the link. So anybody watching at home, or so it gets in the minutes, that is, I just had to send it to a staff person who's watching from home. It is at Town of York. So YouTube, and our handle is at Town of York on YouTube. So no main, no ME, just at Town of York.
So those are the only two that came,
YouTube.com/@townofyork.
those are the only two that came in since.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Right, so we'll move on to public hearings. There are three. The first is wireless communication facility ordinance. Is there a motion to open a public hearing on said ordinance?
So moved.
So we have a public hearing open on the wireless communication facility ordinance. Anyone in the audience wish to come forward, provide testimony? See two people? Yes, sir.
Good evening, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. What a joy it is to see 3 women and 2 men. The patriarchy is dying, but not fast enough. Perhaps if we get term limits, we can have look forward to an all-female board.
Or we get worn out.
Okay, well, these amendments to the wireless telecommunication ordinance are, to me, meaningless because basically it says if you couldn't jam your project through under the old ordinance, we'll give the planning board latitude to waive the setbacks, so you can fit them pretty much anywhere. I suggest that this whole project resulting in the approved proposal for AT&T to put a facility on the water tower here on the Heights in the village was a fiasco. Personally, I took it so badly that I had a bleeding ulcer, 8-centimeter duodenal ulcer, found myself on the bathroom floor in black blood. Came out of that to a massive Lyme disease attack that dropped me down to 130 pounds. I had to learn to walk all over again. And when I got out of that, I got pneumonia so bad that they had to drill a hole in my side and put a machine attached to me to suck the purulence out. So you can see I took it pretty badly. I tried to make you understand through that last process that the New Hampshire, sovereign state of New Hampshire, had put a gubernatorial commission together, 13 esteemed professionals who took the testimony of 10 esteemed professionals in the fields of physics, epidemiology, toxicology, and public policy. 9 out of 10 of the experts said that the radiation from cell devices is deleterious to human health, especially children, and also to animals, insects, and vegetation. So, make a long story short, the final report on the commission to study the environmental and health effects of the evolving 5G technology was submitted to the governor of New Hampshire on November 1st, 2020. He signed it. It's online. You can get it. It's edifying, to say the least. That's one reason why we ought to do this over again, because there was no human impact considered anywhere in that process that took place several years ago. None. And when we went to the Board of Appeals to make our feelings known, we found that the town attorney took over the meeting and acted basically as an attorney for AT&T. There's no other way to say it. It was the most disgraceful thing I've ever seen in town government in 40 years of serving. It was amazing. So there's another good reason to revisit this thing. You can have, there's a mechanism by which you can revisit it, which is simply, they haven't done anything on the project. Every approved project is supposed to make so much advancement in a given year. All they did in the last year is they drove a piece of heavy equipment up and parked it on the lawn of the water tower, and that was it. Nothing's happened. So as far as I'm concerned, and I would ask you to have the town manager evaluate using perhaps MMA's legal resources, whether that permit is still valid. I don't believe it is. And what nobody knew at the time, but everybody knows now, is that ICE is a mortal enemy to democracy. And here's the deal. The only telecommunications company servicing ICE is AT&T. They have an exclusive contract for the next 10 years for data resources, data analytics, database development. When the woman in Minnesota asked why the ICE agent was taking her license plate photo, he said, well, welcome to the modern world. You're now a domestic terrorist. DHS and has 270 million biometric files. And we have given ICE, through AT&T, we've given them a wonderful little nest here in the village that they can add to at will. Now, if that isn't enough, combined with the health impacts that were totally overlooked in the last review, and the fact that they've made no progress on their project, if that isn't enough to revisit this project and see it through different eyes, I don't know what would. Did you miss me? No.
I'm still thinking about it.
Robert, you're going to hang on the board until that village revitalization project is done. I know you are. And as you said, next time we'll just bond it and do it. All right.
So I saw one other hand up for the telecommunications. Yes.
Janet Drew, Avon Ave. I want to talk about the new proposed ordinance for wireless communications. And when I heard Alex talk about know what you vote for, I want to put that out there. Know what you're voting for at every level. And when James said the Environmental Protection Agency is working backwards, that's what I find we're doing here. We've had a few ordinance changes all in a row. The first one was when the town corrected their appeals process by ordinance so that it would match their instructions that they gave to us that were online that did not apply to the appeals process. But that was, mistake number one. The town had to fix that. Then we get another new ordinance, the most recent one that's now in effect, was put in place specifically to help a project go through that had failed the first time around. And now we've got a third new ordinance, changing a few more things. We don't even know where the last ordinance can put things, besides where they wanted it to. We have a third one, and it just has enough loopholes to drive a truck through. The telecoms must be very grateful. There are situations listed where they say they're totally exempt from setbacks. And in any case, the planning board can override any setback requirements. I have to ask why we have them. Why do we bother having an ordinance or a planning department who doesn't plan? We didn't have a pause and plan ordinance. That one was wrong. We couldn't have that one. Instead, we keep changing them. I've never been as mad as I am tonight. And I've been plenty mad when I stood up here. The only good thing I can say about this is it totally has me distracted from the disgusting things that are going on elsewhere. I can bounce back and forth from one to the other. Anyway, I remind you, our original ordinance was evaluated by town consultants who found that it could adequately meet our needs, except that the telecoms would want to go cheap. They wouldn't want to do what they'd need to do. So what did we do? Change the ordinances so the town can go cheap. Even though the original consultant's report found that there were better options, even though the telecom applications say, yeah, if you do this, we can't promise it'll work. Even though we're trying to educate public and schools about using devices less, about getting back into nature. Even though the school program has been good for kids, and even though you refused a ballot initiative to pause and plan, here you are again, ready to change the ordinance. It's like a backroom deal, like the Environmental Protection Agency. Are the telecoms so broke that we need to let them give us cheap options? I hope it goes outside your bedroom windows. I recommend you vote no on this, having this ordinance go through. Because otherwise, I don't know why we have them. Why do you opt to protect telecoms and not individuals? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to come forward, provide testimony on the wireless communication ordinance? Facility ordinance?
We had one write-in. Ms. Drew, if you're leaving, just enter into the record. Janet had written a letter in as well, which with most of the same, I'm sure you'd agree, most of the same points, correct?
I did. I just corrected typos and made it a little bit nicer, not much.
So I won't read that into the record since she showed up, but we have that via email.
Be part of the record, right?
Yep.
So that will close the public hearing on the wireless communication facility ordinance. Is there a motion to open the public hearing on the emergency management ordinance?
So moved.
So the public hearing is open on the emergency management ordinance. Anyone in the audience wish to come forward, provide testimony on the amendments to the emergency management ordinance? Seeing none, we'll close that public hearing. And the last is there a motion to open the public hearing on the ordinance to regulate the sale and distribution of single-use plastic foodware waste sunset clause?
So moved.
So the public hearing is open on the ordinance to regulate the sale and distribution of single-use plastic foodware, removing the sunset clause. Anyone wish to come forward, provide testimony? Yes, sir. Just when you arrive at the podium, just your name and address for the record, please.
Hey everyone, my name is Aiden Ring, 41 Bob Ann Street here in the village. I was one of the students that helped spearhead this ordinance and served on the committee to draft this ordinance. The ordinance went through a lot of debate and work and trial and error. It involved the help of multiple restaurant owners in York and was perfected to the best of our abilities. I think that it is a testament to how active democracy here in York is and how forward-thinking we are as a town, and the example we set as a coastal community here in America and as a town in the state who has also passed the plastic bag ban and the polystyrene ban. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the public like to provide testimony? Peter?
Do you have a written letter from someone out of town? Would you like me to read that? Sure. Okay. Dear Select Board, my name is Chloe Whitbread. I'm a current sophomore at Duke University. I lived in York for almost my entire life and have worked to improve the community. I'm writing to express my support for continuing the ordinance to restrict the sale and distribution of single-use plastic foodware. During high school, I was especially motivated to address environmental impacts in our town. This motivation led me to dedicate myself to restricting the sale and distribution of single-use plastic foodware. I started at the high school level and worked to limit the use of single-use plastic foodware by gaining funding to purchase reusable clamshell containers. However, this was not enough of a change. The Plastic Reduction Task Force, which included me, of the YHS Eco Club, dedicated hundreds of hours to research, drafting legislation, and working to inform the greater community on the detrimental effect of plastic pollution. Finally, I was a member of the town committee that worked to edit and revise the first proposed ordinance and later proposed the ordinance that was adopted by the town. This ordinance is a representation that young voices hold weight in our community and the impact that our youth can have. This ordinance was implemented with careful review, research, and input from numerous York businesses. All York businesses had ample time to be informed about the ordinance's implementation as well as time to implement the changes. I urge the Select Board not to halt the change that has been established. Businesses have taken time to make changes and follow the ordinance. Now our town is an example of what true environmental stewardship looks like. The people of York and those who have worked on the ordinance dedicate time and effort to ensure that this ordinance works best for the environment and for York's businesses. It seems irresponsible to go backwards when so much effort has been dedicated. At the end of the day, the businesses have put in the work, the voters put in the work, and the town committee put in the work. And the other high schoolers and I have put in the work to create positive change in our community. Let's not discount the efforts of these individuals. So for these reasons, I urge the Select Board to preserve the single-use plastic foodware ordinance. Thank you, Chloe Woodbride.
All right, thank you. Anyone else, one last time in the audience? Oop, no, all the hands are going up. Yes.
Hi, my name's Michelle Marian. I live at 45 Fall Mill Road, and along with Chloe and Aiden, was member of the Single-Use Plastics Committee, and I just want to say that we did have a long review process, and in conjunction with the business owners during public hearings, we did compromise and change the ordinance, so I hope that we can continue this in the town. I've tried to stay plugged in with code on this, and I think things have gone relatively smoothly. So thank you.
So hand in the back? Yes, sir.
Hello, Chris Ring, 41 Bob Ann. That's my son over there. And I was speaking here a few years ago, too. And I'm here to just encourage the continuation of this ordinance. When I look at issues like this, I often think there's multiple perspectives on anything. I think we've all heard enough at this point on the ecological hazards of plastics in our society. There's also often a philosophical and even an economic element. I think philosophically that's an important thing to think about. We hear often in our politics discussions about leaving a debt to our future, and I think any discontinuation of this is going to leave a debt to the future, to the people who actually have to manage the cost of not continuing on these paths that the students and the people who have worked on these other issues have worked to improve. So philosophically, we always have to think beyond just economics. And yet, even economically, we can see a lot of value in these things. This is a deep cost to our society, not just in terms of our health and our ecology, but also to our economy. So just want you to continue to imagine all those things that we might experience in the future. I think everything we've seen so far through this ordinance has been really encouraging and very good. And I'm really happy that it passed through here and got all the support from the community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else provide testimony? We'll close the public hearing. So we're on to item H, endorsements. There are no endorsements this evening, so we're item I, old business. The first is flag and banner display policies. Peter?
Mr. Chair, thank you. So this is an item that's been discussed a few times before. The most recent time was a couple months ago, and board asked for the town attorney to give feedback. As a result, I did forward these to the attorney to look at. There were only a few changes. She suggested removing a couple references that were redundant, things like that. So minor changes, and that's it. So I'm happy to talk about specifics if board members have any questions. I know I've had individual conversations, but no real big group discussions or anything. So.
Marla?
I I wouldn't be me if I had one little typo that I noticed. and
Put
that's-
it in there just for you. know
Yeah, I
what it is, so.
appreciate that. It's the second one, the select board policy on display of flags on town-owned. Under procedure, the second paragraph, I think it should be notification flags.
Yep, you caught it, good, yeah.
But I support these. I think they're well-written, they're clear.
Yeah, there was only one
they're
mistake in there I put
simple.
in there for you to see.
Yeah, I
so
appreciate, yeah. I'm glad we're
thank you.
aligned.
Appreciate it, yeah.
I
Any
s- I
other
support them.
members, questions? Marianne?
I just have an inquiry, and obviously if the town attorney reviewed this, she or he probably is better versed than myself, but under the procedure, government flags should be displayed on conditions, and then it goes on to notification flags may be flown. I was just wondering why both the should and may weren't shall. Previously, in the definitions, they had shall.
So the notification in the May, that's designed for specific, I can probably explain that one better. I am open to talking, I'll start with the second one first. Notification flags may be flown, because those are evaluated on case by case. So for example, we don't fly beach warning flags when the beach isn't actively lifeguarded. There's a lot of scenarios that could lead to us not doing it, not adequate staffing, things like that. So they're good things that we do. I know that there were like fire danger warning. That's an old-fashioned way to do fire danger, but I could see that, being something that, other than a sign or something like that. So that's more optional. I'm
Give you
looking at that
wiggle room.
as optional, yeah, may. I wrestled with that myself. There's no legal reason it has to be should or shall. I'm really open, would be a good discussion item, for everybody to weigh in on, but shall be displayed when conditions permit on all town-owned flagpoles at all town facilities. That means you're directing us to make sure buildings and grounds has an United States flag, and a Maine state flag up at all times on any town-owned flagpole on town property. From time to time, it's not something we do just on a whim, but, like we had a damaged Maine flag that we weren't flying one at the town hall for several months. That's an example. Well, we sent it out to get rehemmed. If that's important and we want to do that, I'm really open to it.
I was just wondering, but that
It's-
makes sense. There might be exceptions to the
Yeah.
rules, so leave it exceptionally.
That's kind of a policy, that's more of a policy question for the board. I would view, if you say put shall in there, then we'll make sure that we've got something up at all times. I'm thinking like the beach, there isn't a US flag and a Maine flag that fly at the beach at the bathhouse, under conditions when we have lights and things like that. There's a lot of places we don't fly them every day because they're not lit at night, so they either come down or they're there when office staff are there or something like that. So I'm really open to
I'm not
it.
hearing any members saying we should change the word, so.
Oh, that's why it's in there, for kind of flexibility.
I'm okay as written.
Okay.
So is
I don't know about others.
ready for a motion, anybody? or-
Is the part on the POW flag and the Purple Heart flag clear on the motion? Because as I was writing this, we currently don't have a functional Purple Heart flag, but there was one that wore out. It's a kind of a one-off unique item. But we've flown both of those continuously, I think, for several years at the town hall. So those are the only ones that I'm aware of where I'd recommend those at the opening, that they be approved. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I move that the Select Board policy on the display of banners on utility pole brackets and the Select Board policy on the display of flags on town-owned flagpoles be approved as presented. I further move that the display of the POW MIA flag and the Purple Heart Community flag be authorized on town-owned flagpoles until otherwise ordered by vote of the Select Board.
Second.
So motion by Marla, second by Marilyn. Any additional discussion on the motion? I'm going to call the vote. Robert?
Yes.
Marilyn?
Yes.
Marla?
Yes.
Marianne?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Motion carries 5-0. Item I2, November ordinance amendments, the wireless communication facilities ordinance. Discussion, or are we ready for a motion?
I'd like to ask a few questions. Listening to the speakers tonight, Or am I under the, do I understand correctly, our town attorney suggested these changes?
Yes. Drafted them.
And for what reason?
So for clarification, the planning board, and I think background here is important, the planning board approved a project. I think both of the speakers who, or several of the speakers referenced an approval. That was a planning board approval that went through appeals, went through court, came back to the planning board or the appeals board, and is now in court again. One of the issues that has been raised in that case, so all of the town boards have approved this project moving forward that have touched it, but one of the issues is centering around the specific measurement of setbacks. And so a lot of the items in here are to clarify setbacks when items are, antennas are mounted on existing utility structures. So in our ordinance, we give leeway for mounting antennas. So the construction of a new cell phone tower is pretty limited in the ordinance where it can happen. New towers, a full 200-foot cell tower, pole tower, can only happen in certain areas. There are accommodations in the ordinance or an order of preference that it is more preferable to locate on existing structures, be buildings, think like inside of church steeples, on water tanks, structures that already exist, that are already a visual nuisance, if you will, to the neighborhood that they're in, or maybe not if it's a nice building, but that it's called co-locating an antenna on those structures is preferable to building a new giant tower that would be a visual disturbance. Now, that doesn't get into health and safety concerns. I understand that a lot of that discussion was going on and has been going on for years here. But it's to locate on an existing structure, whether it's utility or whether it's existing building. That's what most of these changes are about, on how we treat those.
I think my last question for clarification, does this new proposed ordinance reduce the setbacks that are currently in place? So in other words, if the setbacks currently are, I'm going to just throw this out, 30 feet, is this now saying it's 20 feet or 10 feet?
Yeah, I think that's one way to look at it, yes. So it's not reducing the number, it's it is by 3 feet, but the way that it's worded, if you mount it on an existing utility structure, so think water tank, or building, and it doesn't extend more than 3 feet from that, which is the typical kind of mounted on a bracket to the existing exterior of a building, setback rules do not apply because you're already, the intent is that you're measuring to an existing building. Now, it does reduce it by 3 feet, so I'm not going to say it doesn't reduce it at all. But if it's reasonably close to that building or that utility structure, you don't have to go to the maximum setback that's specified in the ordinance. So yeah, it would.
So only if there was a water tower or a
The reduction in here, yep, so it calls specifically, if you look at the section F setbacks, which is on page, it says page 6, but it's page 2 of the amendment that you're looking at. Yep, so section F, right about there.
I was just a little confused, and, it's something I've been following too for years, and you get a little fuzzy with which iteration we're at, and I just want to be clear on what I'm voting on and what it will allow or not allow.
Yeah, I think
in the future.
it does, I think it is more permissive, so the people that spoke against tonight, their argument is that it's more permissive in what it would allow.
Thank you.
Some of this is clarification and some of this is more permissive, yes.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, I move to place the Wireless Communication Facilities Ordinance Amendment on the November 2026 general referendum ballot.
Do we have a second?
Second?
Motion by Robert, second by Marla. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. Robert?
Yes.
Marilyn?
Yes.
Marla?
Yes.
Mary Ann?
No.
Chair votes yes, 4-1. Okay, next is November Ordinance Amendment, Emergency Management Ordinance.
This one's really simple. It's writing our disaster assistance fund into the emergency management ordinance as a source of funding. making the alignment between one previous act of the voters and one previous act of the board. So that
And
There's-
the money
there's
that goes
clarity.
into the disaster assistance fund, just for those watching, comes from which source?
So, as established by the Select Board more than a year ago, close to 2 years ago now, the Disaster Assistance Fund takes money that we've been, how do we do this? How do I explain this best? So when there's a disaster and we commit force account work to that disaster, so Public Works is out doing overtime, using equipment, police, fire, all of our public safety groups there are rates that FEMA reimburses us at. So if there is a flood and you have to barricade, you've got 6 firefighters and 2 fire trucks, a Public Works truck and a grader out there and a front-end loader working on the flooding. There are rates that FEMA sets for all of those equipment. So
My
we are
understanding is it's FEMA reimbursements for small projects?
it's not small projects, it's actual active disaster. So when we're doing that work, they're small. Like, small is the
There was
way-
like $1 million
the common
threshold or
sense.
something?
Yeah, the common sense, but not a project. It's for our actual active disaster recovery.
Respond to stabilize.
So we reimburse at FEMA's established, we get reimbursed at FEMA's established rates. We propose to the board, and the board previously established a fund where this goes to use for future disasters. So it's money that we've essentially already spent on disasters that we're being reimbursed on disaster response, being reimbursed by the federal government, and we are saving it in that fund for future storm damage repairs. So it's kind of a circle. We get that question a lot. Okay, where do we see the savings from FEMA reimbursements? This is one of those places where everything spent out of this fund will have been previously reimbursed from the federal government.
You ready for a motion?
You want to go?
Sure.
I'll go. I move to place the emergency management ordinance amendment on the November 2026 general referendum ballot.
So, motion by Marilyn, is there a second?
Second?
Seconds by Marlon. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, I call the vote. Robert?
Yes.
Marilyn?
Yes.
Marlon?
Yes.
Marianne?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Motion carries 5-0. And the third is ordinance to regulate the sale and distribution of single-use plastic foodware, removing the sunset clause.
I'll read.
Well, we might not even, okay. You can read it.
Good evening, Taylor McGuire. I'm the environmental planner for the town. Just to give you a little bit more background on this, so as you heard from Ms. Whitbread's email, this process started years before I was ever even hired in this position. The high schoolers worked on this for a very long time. They were appointed to a committee that had a good mixture of opposing ideals that included business owners as well in that. And then in addition to several of our public hearings, we also had informational sessions that we hosted with various members of the public, primarily for business owners, for the purpose of if they thought that it might hinder their business, we wanted to be able to have that discussion with them, see what we could do to modify this ordinance to make sure that we weren't inhibiting their business, and also to help them sort of look at some different options that were more sustainable. It was during that second informational session that it was actually a recommendation that came out of this board to include the sunset clause for the purpose of, obviously as a town, we don't want to add certain restrictions on a business to where they can't actually run their business efficiently or effectively. We didn't want to put any of our small business owners out of business by having this ordinance. So now that it's been in effect for several years, I did get some information from the Director of Code Enforcement. There have been 12 instances where we've seen single-use plastic that would be in violation of this ordinance, and after just a friendly conversation, essentially a lack of information, there have been no notice of violations issued. Everyone has just sort of apologized, oh, we didn't know, and kind of moved on from there. So we haven't really seen very many negative impacts to the town, and I believe it would be appropriate to remove the sunset clause.
Thank you.
Thank you, Taylor. I must say, this was one of the times I was so proud of the students at York High School, because it was their initiative and they worked hard on this. And to see them return, to speak on it, it says a lot about our town. And I'm very pleased to support this and to continue to support it.
Great. Go on, Marianne.
Yes, I wanted to take a moment, and following Marilyn, I was very encouraged to hear Aiden Ring speak tonight. And I was encouraged when the students years ago put this forward with their petition, and then they really spearheaded things. And I thought then, you know, good for them. And I was really pleased to hear Aiden Ring speak tonight about our community and how we're forefront for the state of Maine and the town, and hopefully this is proper for me to say, you know, he's a young person taking pride and being forward-thinking, and it just makes me feel good.
Anyone else? Marilyn? Or Martha, please?
I'm Marla, it's
I
okay.
know.
I'd just like to pile on, and I think this has been a tremendous success. And like Marilyn and Mary Ann said, my other MARs, it was started by students, and it was wonderful to hear from Chloe, too, all the way down at Duke. I'm glad they're doing well, and they've done a lot of great for our community and support making this permanent.
Anyone else? Is there a motion?
Sure. I move to place the ordinance to regulate sale and distribution of single-use plastic foodware amendment on the November 2026 general referendum ballot.
So we have a motion by Marilyn. Is there a second?
Second?
Second by Marla. Any additional discussion? Call the vote. Robert?
Yes.
Marilyn?
Yes.
Marla?
Yes.
Mary Ann?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Motion carries 5-0. So on to I3, York Ambulance Funding Stabilization. And we have Wendy with a financial report. As Wendy's walking up here, Wendy Anderson, Town Manager's Financial Director. Wendy, thank you very much on behalf of the board for a very thorough report, turned over very quickly. And you're working with the ambulance folks, and the ambulance folks, thank you for cooperating with Wendy. Certainly going to help sort of set the table for our discussion.
You're very welcome.
Bear with me here. At the request of the town manager, I was asked to review the Ambulance Association's financial information and cash flow projections in connection with its request for additional FY27 funding. The purpose of the review is to assess the reasonableness of the cash flow assumptions, identify significant financial considerations or potential funding needs, and provide information that may assist the town manager and the board in evaluating the association's request. This is not a formal audit or assurance engagement. The review is limited to the financial information and supporting materials provided by the York Ambulance Association, and it is intended to identify observations, questions, or areas that may warrant further consideration. I'd like to thank Armin Derderian, the York Ambulance Association Treasurer, Josh Allen, Chief of Operations, and Crystal Gay, Business Manager, for their cooperation throughout the review and for their time with me answering questions, providing information, and assisting me in understanding the materials. They were super helpful, and I appreciate that. To give the public a little bit of background, the York Ambulance Association is a 501c3 nonprofit organization governed by an 8-member board of directors. As a tax-exempt organization, they are required to file an annual Form 990 with the Internal Revenue Service. Those forms are available on the IRS website through the year 2024. The 2025 form is on extension, and the filing deadline is November 15th for that. When comparing York Ambulance Association's current financial projections to financial information reported in those 990 filings, it's important to recognize that the scope of the operations has changed. The Ambulance Association previously provided services under contracts with the communities of South Berwick, Maine, and Rollinsford, New Hampshire. The South Berwick contract concluded in May of '26, and Rollinsford concluded in October of '25. As a result, historical revenues and expenses reported on those 990 filings reflect operations that included those additional service areas. So direct comparison of those historical results to the current financial projections would not be an apples-to-apples comparison. The prior year information remains useful for the understanding of the financial history, but changes in service area and associated revenues and expenses should be considered when evaluating current and projected financial performance. Based on the most recent cash flow projection provided, which was provided to me on Monday, August 3rd, if the organization continues to operate under its current structures and the assumptions contained in the projection are realized, available cash is projected to be exhausted by the end of November. The projection indicates that the Ambulance Association would have a cash deficit of approximately $264,000 by the end of the town's fiscal year. The projection is an important consideration in evaluating the request for additional funding. However, the projected deficit should be considered in conjunction with the other assumptions and underlying cash flow forecasts, existing liabilities, anticipated revenues and expenditures, and other financial information discussed in the review. So I'll take you through briefly the areas that I looked at and my thoughts on those. Regarding cash and available resources, the Ambulance Association's resources consist of a business checking account, a savings account, and an investment account. At June 30th, 26, the combined ending balances adjusted for outstanding checks that had not cleared total approximately $112,000. Based on the association's general ledger, outstanding obligations from prior periods total about $28,000. The majority of this amount represents 401k contributions to their retirement plan. These contributions relate to prior periods and remain outstanding as of the date of the review. The age and nature of those contributions warrant further discussion and clarification. I would like to supplement this and tell you that this afternoon I talked with the treasurer, and he has told me that that entire amount of back obligation has been paid. In addition to these obligations, the association has a small business loan originating in 2021. The original amount of that was $150,000. The association has indicated that the loan is currently in default. I have requested the original loan documentation in order to better understand the terms of the obligation, repayment requirements, and outstanding balance. Those documents haven't been received as of the date of this report, but they are working on getting those to me. The defaulted SBA loan warrants further discussion before a determination is made regarding additional town funding. Based on the information provided, the association has periodically relied on loans from board members to assist with cash flow needs over the past several years. As of April 26, there is a $20,000 obligation to a board member that was represented by an issued uncleared check. This amount has been considered in arriving at the approximately $112,000 adjusted cash balance. The use of board member loans and the practice of issuing repayment checks that remain outstanding for extended periods warrants further discussion. For future financial reporting, I recommend that any loans or advances from board members be formally documented, separately identified in the accounting records, and reported as outstanding liabilities until repayment is actually made, rather than issuing a repayment check and holding on to them until sufficient cash is available. This would just provide greater clarity regarding the cash position moving forward. The outstanding 401k contributions, SBA loan, and board member loans represent obligations that predate the current funding request and should be considered separately from the projections in ongoing operating needs. In the area of accounts receivable, I was provided with some reporting information from the association's billing services, medical reimbursement services, also referred to as MRS, to assist in reviewing projected patient service revenue. Within the time available for this review, I was not able to identify to independently determine the collectability of any outstanding receivables. A more detailed analysis of accounts receivables by payer, age, contractual adjustment, historical collection experience, and collection status would be necessary to make those determination. So it's possible there are receivables out there that may be received. They're not part of this my number, that they have put about $850 in their per month in their projections. Based on regarding revenue, based on records and historical information provided, the association's revenue projections appear reasonable and generally consistent with historical collection experience. It should be noted that ambulance billing and reimbursements are specialized and can be affected by payer mix, Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement requirements, insurance coverage, transportation and level of service, and other industry-specific factors. My assessment of projected revenue is based primarily on historical, financial, and collection information provided by the association and MRS. I have not independently evaluated the projections from the perspective of an ambulance billing or reimbursement specialist. Now I'll move to operating expenses. Payroll and related benefits represent the association's largest operating expenses, accounting for between 75% and 89% of all monthly operating expenses, depending on what month you're looking at. Payroll is processed externally through paychecks based on the information provided. Payroll tax payments and required filings are current. My review of actual July 26 payroll compared with the amount included in the cash flow projection indicates that July payroll expenses appear to be understated by about $30,000. By my account, I see 3 pay periods in that period. The cash flow appears to me to have two periods of payroll in it. I will say that the treasurer and I have not had an opportunity to go back and forth on this report, but that is what I'm seeing. I have not evaluated the association's staffing levels or scheduling practices as part of the financial review. However, actual payroll costs may be affected by staffing decisions, employee availability, and use of per diem staff. Overtime required to manage coverage when shifts are not otherwise filled are also a factor. Given that payroll and related benefits comprise a significant majority of the association's expenses, a relatively small change in staffing or overtime can have a meaningful effect on their projections. In addition to payroll, there were a couple of other line items that I feel need adjustment. Fuel is one of them. When annualized, the projected fuel costs appear generally consistent with historical spending. Given the volatility of fuel prices, however, I think the current projection is somewhat tight, and I would recommend increasing that line by $100 a month for the months of August through June for a total increase of $1,100. Historical telephone expenses appear to be approximately $350 per month in most months. Based on the spending level, I recommend increasing the projection for August through June by $150 a month for a total increase of $1,650. I did not identify an amount for legal expenses, and while there's no specific known legal expenses that I can project, I recommend including a $5,000 contingency for potential legal costs. Given the unpredictability of when such costs might arise, I would put that amount early in the cash flow projection. This is intended as a planning allowance rather than an indication that they will necessarily incur those expenses. Together with the approximately $30,000 in July payroll adjustment and the other small recommended changes, I would increase the cash flow by approximately $37,750. The cash flow projection includes an expense of $5,610 a month beginning in September for anticipated financing of a new ambulance that is awaiting delivery. This item requires further discussion and should be considered an estimate rather than a confirmed obligation at this time. The association has indicated that there may be limitations on its ability to borrow, and discussions are ongoing regarding how the ambulance will handle the acquisition. And this is another item that Armin and I discussed this afternoon, and he has confirmed that financing is not a viable option for them for this right now. And it's sort of a live, moment-to-moment conversation they're having right now as to how they're going to address that ambulance. The association staff indicated that due to current financial constraints, no significant capital expenditures are planned during FY27 other than the ambulance discussed in the preceding section. The association has indicated that a second new ambulance and upgrades or replacement of certain equipment are being considered for FY28, and they are pursuing grants and other potential funding sources to assist with those future capital needs. For future funding discussions, I recommend the association provide the town with a multi-year capital plan identifying anticipated vehicle and equipment replacement needs, estimated costs, expected timing, and potential funding sources. This would provide a clearer picture of the association's longer-term financial needs and allow anticipated capital costs to be considered separately from ongoing operational expenses. So to summarize my recommendations for adjustments, we're beginning at the association's projected deficit of $264,000. I suggest adding the $30,000 for the July payroll adjustment, a fuel adjustment of $1,100, telephone adjustment of $1,650, and legal contingency of $5,000, bringing the adjusted projected deficit to $301,750. And I've added in an additional cash flow capacity contingency in the amount of $48,250, bringing the total recommended funding level from what I'm seeing to $350,000. That additional $48,000 is intended to provide a reasonable cash flow capacity to address variability in payroll and other operating expenses, as well as other uncertainties identified in the review. Payroll costs can be difficult to project due to fluctuating staff and per diem participation, which can result in unplanned overtime costs. In addition, deferred capital purchases over many years may increase the likelihood of an unanticipated repair or maintenance expense. Given the projected cash shortfall, the adjustments identified in this review, and the remaining financial uncertainties, I believe $350,000 represents a more reasonable estimate of the amount of additional funding that should be considered for FY27. This amount, when combined with the town's current contract, would bring total funding for this fiscal year to $503,352. And I just want to review the conditions and recommendations that I have prior to funding, as I think that they're important.
Wendy, we've got on, I agree, I hear what you're talking about. We've got conditions as a item further down. Do we want to touch those?
Oh, okay.
Well, she can read a
Put
report.
those together, Wendy's. Okay. Yeah.
Well, I'll just jump to the summary part of my report where they're bullet pointed then, and if you have questions, I'm here.
Yeah, actually, that's the next bullet on the agenda, so.
Oh, okay.
Either way, yeah.
Okay, so
But I'm assuming that will.
I've elaborated on these 6 bullet points in the review above. But in short, I recommend bringing all current outstanding 401k contributions current, which they tell me they have done. But equally as important is establishing an agreed upon schedule for future deposits. It's important those things are deposited according with the plan document. Provide current SBA loan documentation and including the outstanding balance and a written repayment arrangement with the SBA before the town funds are released. Provide a written and supportable acquisition and financing plan for the ambulance, which that's live and ongoing. I'm sure you'll hear more about that very soon. Provide monthly financial statements, bank statements, completed bank reconciliations, and actual to-date cash flow comparisons by the 15th of each month moving forward as a condition of this additional funding. Present any new FY27 borrowing, loans, leases, board member advances, or other financing arrangement to the Select Board for review in advance, just so that you're aware of any changes in cash flow that could happen. I suggest that. And providing a multi-year capital plan as part of future funding discussions. And that pretty much summarizes what I have found. People were really helpful in getting down into the numbers of this with just a few days to do it. And if you have any questions, please ask.
Questions for Wendy, board members? Marla?
Wendy, thank you.
Welcome.
And thank you to the York Ambulance Association folks for working collaboratively together. But thank you in particular, Wendy, for your work and your focus and your insights. It's a lot to digest, but you've given us, I think, a good roadmap. And once again, I appreciate everyone's contributions and your work.
Thank you.
I would publicly like to say that also. Yes, thank you very much. And thank you, ambulance, for helping along.
Myself as
Yeah.
well.
So we have that bit of information. The discussion on funding conditions.
So Wendy laid out some of those. I know I went to the budget committee several weeks ago now, but had additional questions from the budget committee. One that's not a condition that I'll just throw out there so I can say it on record, because I was asked by the budget committee, but would the town, would the select board essentially consider proposing some portion of the money to come from contingency instead of all of it to be at a special budget referendum? So that's an open question for deliberation tonight and probably decision at one of the next, next meeting or one of the next meetings. The other questions that I've been asked repeatedly are board representation, any type of representation with the ambulance association. If the town could have even ex officio representatives assigned or liaisons assigned to the YAA board, if you would. And Wendy already touched on the reconcile financial statements. So these are questions that I think Josh from the ambulance was there as well. We kind of heard some of those questions and just in one-on-one conversations after with budget committee members that have come to my office to talk to me about it. Those are questions that I was asked. Wendy made some recommendations. This kind of gets to the questions mostly from the budget committee, but from the public, okay, what insight does the town have to ensure that whatever we're providing for assistance, that solves the problem? Because if we're providing funding, we want to make sure that our partners at York Ambulance continue to stay functional because we need them to provide ambulance. So that's I don't want this to be considered punitive. It's more like, how do we ensure that we're going to make it through the fiscal year? And how do we stay in closer communication? So Wendy's given an example kind of what that looks like really in depth, probably uncomfortable, reading through things and reviewing things and all that, that level of security and kind of feeling like, okay, we understand, Wendy understands what's going on. She's communicated that to us. There's a general confidence in at least the information we're seeing from the Ambulance Association. I know the numbers are different. Wendy's recommending different numbers. We should probably talk about that maybe tonight with YAA. But that we're all agreeing the base that we're discussing is the base. And so I'm there from Wendy's analysis. Hopefully the select board and budget committee are getting comfortable with kind of being at that base and having that open level of communication. And even if it's uncomfortable and feels like we're prying, it's there so that we.
Can you speak a little louder or closer? I'm concerned about folks at home.
Sure, how about that? So that I can't, how about that? Okay. So just to ensure that we're there at the base level, that we all have the same understanding of the numbers that we're asking for. I guess the question for me is, Wendy has recommended a different number. I think we've all looked at it. Probably the discussion with York Ambulance is the request was for substantially less than what we're hearing from staff, but we're not really
that far apart on the numbers at the end, the cash flow at the end of the year for YAA. So I think there's more agreement. There's some adjustments that Wendy's suggesting, but generally that their cash flow at the end of the year is lower than what they're asking for in requests. So maybe that's, I know we have reps here from the
Yeah,
ambulance.
so we have representatives from the ambulance, York Ambulance Association Board of Directors, or trustees, I'm not sure what you're called, but, and Eric Backey, the president's here. If you want to respond to any of the presentations, that would be great. We can have a discussion and introduce those trustees or directors that are here, as well as staff. Sure.
Yeah. Just push the button to make them green so that you don't get yelled at for not speaking into the microphone like me.
Eric has a booming voice.
Right. Well, I would almost say, are there questions? I mean, I think we generally agree. We've done as much as we can. Sorry, I do have a little bit of an allergy thing going on, so it's not as booming as you might be used to. You know, we've been as transparent with information and everything as we can. So, and I know that we got a chance to see that report a little bit earlier today, and I mean, that's sort of the problem, right? You see it right there. So are there specific questions? Are there things that we can?
Any questions from members?
Is there, yes. Is there anything more that you know about the SBA loan that's in default? And I'd like to flesh out things like, did it mature? Have there been any payments made? When was the last payment that was made? Have you received demand letters? I'd really like some more specifics about that situation, more than we're in discussion with them, which is what we heard at an earlier meeting.
Wrong button. Okay. Well, that was an EIDL loan. So way back in, I'm not sure exactly when it was, maybe 22, 23, the government allowed us to borrow money. And because we were a nonprofit, it was a very low interest rate. It was at 2.75%. So at the time, we decided that it might not be a bad deal to take because we were still in COVID. We had incurred a lot of costs being in COVID, so we took that money. The government allowed us for a period of time to make no payments. They said, you don't have to make any payments. It was originally, I think it was going to be a year. And then after the year came, I believe they extended it for maybe even 24 months after that before we had to start making payments. Well, we ended up defaulting on the note. We did make a recent payment. That's how I found out that it was defaulted. We made a recent payment of $7,200, which is reflected in the schedule that I had given Wendy. And frankly, I mean, I think we've got some written document today perhaps, so I haven't even looked at it yet. I can't really tell you what it's about. But the fact that we've made that payment, which represents, I believe, 10 months, the fact that or maybe even 11 months, the fact that we made the payment, I'm hoping that we can get out of default. Don't know how yet, but I'm hoping that we can get out of default so that we can continue to make the payments of $641 a month. It's going to take a while to get that fully paid, but it is what it is. I hope that answer your question. Now, I know not
Partially.
exactly,
Yeah,
not fully, but I don't have the, I can't tell you yet.
Partially, but I'm sure when you give the documents along with all the correspondence that you've received to Wendy, she'll be able to sort
without a doubt. And
as
I will
well.
tell you that Wendy, in a very short period of time, did a lot of work. In fact, I was glad last week I was not Wendy, because she really did do a lot of work. And
Thank you guys for being here. The way in which you speak doesn't give me a lot of confidence in regards to how you're looking at this and the debt that is there. You got a small SBA loan, and yeah, we didn't even realize we had it. You know, it doesn't bode well from a business standpoint to say you have a good handle on this and moving forward. Why should we think that as a business, you guys have this under control moving forward?
Well, I mean, I think it's going to depend upon the funding. I mean, you know, we didn't ask to be put into this position. If we unraveled the tape a little bit, we could probably say that it started when COVID started. That's when things started to get progressively worse. And what we were focused on as an organization is to provide the best possible care for this community, and we did what we had to do to keep it going. I don't know if you realize it or not, but not only regionally or statewide, nationally, there is a problem with EMS, and it's in the labor force because they're in such demand that we had to go ahead. And one thing that we did, if you look at our wages, we had to increase our wages because we wouldn't have had anybody working. And I think Josh will even tell you that we might have even lost a few people because we couldn't keep up with the pay rate. So again, it was something we didn't foresee, something we didn't ask for, but it happened, and that's part of the reason why we're in the position we're in today. There are other reasons too. When COVID hit, I always use the example that $8 box of gloves became $28. You know, things just exploded cost-wise. So I don't know if that answers you, but.
You know, I'd say too that really, since its inception, York Ambulance is accustomed to operating right on the line, just trying to keep things as inexpensive to the town as possible. And we're not a town department, but we sort of function that way, right? We try to take, when I joined the board, I think we were taking $12,000 a year from the town. We had worked that up to maybe $25,000 or $35,000. And then 4 or 5 years ago, when we came out of our analysis, we realized we needed to make a significant jump. And here, with the board, we were encouraged to take advantage of the fund that we had and use some of that to try and keep the costs down to the town. That's been a little bit of a theme going all along. And actually, at that time, we did approve an ex officio board member from the town to be added to the board, but it never materialized over that next year, so we kind of stopped calling or inviting. And things did sort of settle in, but as I've told you guys before, that first contract that we signed, I can't remember if it was 4 or 5 years ago, we truly felt like that number that was in that contract was what it would take to get through those 3 years. But, we were back over a year in advance trying to plan for that next contract with Ken in here, working with you and working with, our operational team. We really kind of handed that to them as a, what do you need to get through the next, contract. And we're not the only ambulance service, even within the towns that border us, that have had this sort of problem. And I'm sure you've followed that our next door neighboring ambulance service had to do this very same thing coming into the end of, the fiscal year 2026 for an alarmingly similar amount of money. So really from our perspective, Armin hints at it, you see some of it in this document. I know we've talked to you about it a little bit. We have, because of that, it finally caught up with us around things like payroll, right? We're probably one of the lowest paying EMS services in the area. So we're constantly having that change in front of us. And it's one of the reasons you see the amount of overtime that we have, is because, sometimes we have to burn certain resources more because we don't have the numbers. It's just a reality that it's come due, where we take, about $147,000 from as your contribution now. And I think the lowest neighboring contribution, if you looked at Wells as a similar town, they get over $1 million every year, and their call volumes and populations are roughly the same. You look at even South Berwick, they're paying us $310,000, and I want to say they're up over $500,000 as their operational number to try and replace us. It's just a reality that maybe we held on a little too long because we had that fund that we were able to burn down to support the town. And, do I wish that we had that moment in a meeting where we realized we needed help, last August, so that we could have done it as part of the budget cycle? 1,000,000%. But once we realized, we came and talked to you first, kind of like, we think we can still make it. And as things were piling up and looking closer, we knew we had to come in and ask for help to get there. And truly, we would love to be part. We've been a lot of transparency kind of outbound. We'd love to have some transparency, inbound, and participate with your task force, at least have Josh in there, because as we're looking at all these numbers and talking about all the things that we could potentially improve, we have things we'd like to improve as well. I think you're designing, we could be designing the future model instead of kind of, I see things that are in your, what you're going to talk about here in a minute. Those are going to take months. And those are months that I think we need to be dedicating to figuring out the 27 forward solution, and whatever that's going to be, because this number that Wendy has come up with of 503,000, that's probably a starting point of a new service going forward, not counting capital. We have some things in motion around potentially, solidifying ambulance and the equipment, as she alluded to. But even when we met with Steve Burns, and I think Todd was in that meeting 4 or 5 years ago, an ambulance got onto the capital planning for you guys that we were kind of counting on in there, because we knew we were in a decent position operationally, but we weren't in a position to just go buy an ambulance out of our fund anymore. Our fund couldn't cover the cost of an ambulance anymore. Whereas when I first joined the board, an ambulance was less than half what it cost then, and probably, less than half what it is today. So the planning you have kind of going on the side, I truly think minimally Josh should be in there, because it's got to be done in sync. By the time some of this work is done that's in your plan, it might be too late to be designing that go forward. 'Cause I don't think there's a lot of options out there. We have a lot of medical, we have medical administrators on the board, we have doctors on the board, we have, and we've been doing this for a while. We'd love to share closer. I think the Wendy exercise just shows us that we should really probably be part of that team, even though we're not a town department. We've kind of, at this point, you've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. We're kind of one-weighing it. We'd love to have that be two ways.
Thank you.
Another thing I like, I'm sorry. There was one other thing I'd like to point out is, because I've brought this up a couple times at our board meetings, that 1 month, 42% of our calls were no transports, which means we got no money for it. 42% of the calls in York were no transports. Now it's hard to say you're going to go ahead and provide a service that you got no money for. But on top of that, if we're too busy, if they're too busy responding to a call that doesn't produce any money, well, what happens if a call came in at the same time that could produce money, that went elsewhere, that didn't go with us? So it's and I know we've talked about it before. If there's some way that we could We have some people in town that I've fallen and I can't get up. We have to respond. But a lot of times it's more babysitting than it is medical needs. And I don't know what the solution is, but it does cost us a lot of money to provide that service. The other thing I'd like to point out, so that you know, is that, and Wendy is aware of it too, that, we do watch our pennies, and we have to we have to have the manpower to go ahead and provide the service. But, our salary ranges, everybody's hourly. There's nobody that's under a salary arrangement. Our hourly pay goes anywhere from $18 an hour up to like $42 an hour. So just think about it, that you've got somebody that we're paying $18 an hour that's going to save somebody's life. We have a lot of dedicated, hardworking employees that are really dedicated to this town and to the York Ambulance Association. Thank you.
Yeah, so I just, building a little bit on what Marilyn said, and having somewhat of a lack of confidence. I've looked at the 990s that have been provided, and you go back 2 years ago when we were negotiating a contract. I think at that time the board felt there were issues, financial issues, operating issues. You looked at the 990s, you could see it. And yet, I'm hearing number now, realization. When did we have the realization? Transparency, we've been transparent with the town. Well, you weren't then. You weren't transparent. You had a company that did an analysis that we wanted to see. You wouldn't provide it. It was a very frustrating negotiation. And now all of a sudden you've had a realization. I mean, you must have had the realization in the last 6 months, because I had conversations with some people 6 months ago that said there wasn't a problem. So there is some we can't spend all our time looking back. We have to look forward. But there is issues with me a little bit around confidence in you can run this organization. Because this conversation should have happened at least 2 years ago, and maybe even before that. So those are some of my concerns, those are some of my concerns.
I think my peers have spoken what I'm thinking.
So, yeah, to build on, what the others have said, and I was in some of those meetings not that long, 6 months ago, when there wasn't a problem. We were going to be able to make it for a year, we being the community, providing ambulance service to folks in town or visitors. And then several months later, leadership changed on the board and there was a problem. So I'm turning to my colleague vice chair that, Peter, with manager, can you please tell Barlow what happened at that meeting? Because it's not what I'm hearing, months later. All of a sudden, the whole place is collapsing. So, I have that concern. I hear from folks in town, they want an ambulance in town. I don't think they care what form, fashion, where it sits, what garage it sits in, but they want an ambulance. So, that's going to be in play at some point. We need to talk about that. Robert did mention the Fitch report, that we asked for that time and again, and maybe the Fitch report, I don't know, I never saw it, but maybe it said that this was going to happen, and you just chose not to share it. I don't know. So that's a concern. One other question I have, and maybe you can't answer it here at this meeting tonight, but the outstanding analysis that Wendy did working with the ambulance staff and and your treasurer, I thank y'all for that. But are there any outstanding liabilities that are not on paper? So are there potential lawsuits that are happening? Is there any kind of litigation pending anywhere that was not included in any of the documentation that came from the ambulance to the town?
There's no litigation that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I do want to.
Were you going to say something?
Go ahead, Tina.
Yes, hi, Tina Parsons Leitner, Esquire, sometimes. I'm an attorney. I'm not the board's attorney, but I sit on the board, and I just wanted to verify that there is no pending litigation that we've been made aware of.
Great, thank you.
Other liabilities, not just litigation.
Are there any other liabilities that are out there that if not, an
No.
award has not been made or may be coming?
No, no,
Not that we've been
everything.
made aware of.
Everything is on the financials. Wendy's been through it. The 401K is up to date. We had a very good membership drive. They gave us the funds to get caught up on a lot of things. Membership drive is probably going to exceed over $100,000 this year, where in prior years it had been lower. So that membership drive, a lot of that money came in July, towards the end of July, and that's what we've used now to go ahead and get caught up with the 401K and stuff like that.
And that's great to hear, because that just
Yeah,
illustrates the point that
it was actually a great response.
that all of
to
us are
tell you the
making,
truth.
that we want an ambulance in town, right? But it's, what does it look like, right, moving forward? Because it's, $500,000 is a lot of money, but if it's needed, we need to talk about that. And there's the short-term problem, and we have a very tight window when we can correct that problem, maybe. It needs to go through another committee as well, and then go to the voters and see what happens. And then moving forward on the long-term problem that has been touched on, so.
I do want to clarify too, in the Fitch report, we gave you the financial piece of it, we gave you the run piece of it, we gave you the data pieces of the report. The only piece we didn't or couldn't share, based on advice of counsel, was the actual narrative portion. And the narrative portion, because of the way we requested that report, we didn't know what we didn't know in terms of the medical expertise in the staff, and we wanted them, there was a component to that to say, hey, take a look at our staff, take a look at our skill sets, take a look at things that we as lay people maybe don't understand about EMS. And the way that narrative is written, we can't actually just put that out into public. The attorney just won't let us. He looked at it and said, you cannot do that. But we shared with you the run data, we shared with you the financial, the budget that we proposed to you was the budget that came from Fitch. I think we even brought the Fitch consultant here to actually do the presentation. That was kind of the core of it, so.
And since we're on the Fitch report, the reason for the Fitch report is we could sense that things were going afoul. So we know we needed some help. And we went ahead and we used Fitch to go ahead and help us operationally and financially.
And actually, that's a good point, because the Fitch proposal to York, you guys countered, actually, and we did not implement the Fitch recommendation at that time, not the duration or the amounts. So that's sort of when the start came of, you've got this fund, that theme of support it with your fund, so.
I have one last question. You said 42% of your telephone calls you cannot bill for.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
You said 42% of your telephone calls cannot be billed.
That was in 1 month. It averages about 30% of our calls, 32% of our calls, no revenue calls.
But that's on an ongoing basis, right?
Ongoing basis.
Is that because you don't have a medical person on the board?
No, it's because the patient refuses to be transported. We can't bill them.
About 1/3 of our calls on a regular basis are what we call no transports. And these folks are calling for simple needs. They slipped out of their wheelchair, they need help back up, or they have been sitting in the recliner all day and want help getting to bed. These are public service issues. These are elderly care issues. A lot of the elderly population in New York will utilize our services just to help with day-to-day tasks. There is no mechanism to bill them through any insurances.
So is that number changed? I mean, that's always been true. So is that number, the percentage, has that changed? In the last-
It remains very consistent over the last 3 to 5 years that I've been tracking it.
Yeah.
But when you were on the
That's a third
board,
of our calls.
we never had it back in the day when you were on the board. It was a new phenomenon. We didn't have it.
No, I remember
When
that
we took
back.
on South Berwick, they had it, and we were sort of shocked by
didn't
that
have
idea.
what? That we
The
didn't,
no transport, the level we have today, we were nowhere near a
I
third back
remember it
then.
being issued. even-
It was an issue in South Berwick when we took them on, and then it became an issue here. We even worked with like YCSA and some of the other groups in town to try and figure out how to handle it as it was becoming a bigger and bigger issue. So it has certainly grown in my time on the board from something we never talked about to something we talk about constantly.
I guess I remember it.
In my 25-plus years of experience, I've seen a trend over the last several years where this is becoming more and more common. A problem I see here in the town of York is elderly residents do not have any family support. Their children, their siblings and such can't afford to live here. They grow up and move away. So the parents are here by themselves now, and their kids are all elsewhere. So they are more and more relying on emergency services, not just ambulance services, but the fire service as well, to do these simple day-to-day tasks that they can't do by themselves without assistance.
Anyone else? So the numbers we have before us, and you talked about the next fiscal budget, moving on to the next calendar year or fiscal year. What do you see that growth having to be if 500,000 is the number the town provides today?
It is a good question.
Well, we have until like, what, October to figure that out?
Right. Well, I think there's the question of the model too, right? Because what we talked about when we've met with you prior is part of the reason we can't compete, and especially with South Berwick going municipal now, we can't offer benefits like they can. So, on our list is maintain York Ambulance as a standalone business, more funding. But I think in that discussion has to be what it would look like as a town department. I mean, you would be able to bring things to the table that way, or we would be as an ambulance, however you want to think of that. We don't have that advantage today. And honestly, we've seen multi-year contracts now. It doesn't work. They're pretty much invalid a year in. We survived the first year, great, and then it's right out the window. So the idea being, in an annual budget cycle where you're able to see it, Wells EMS had to go, they are on that and fell short 300,000 last year. We would be in a much better situation, I think, to be on an annual cycle, whether we're standing alone or a town department. And I think we need to look at both of those options closely. I think we told you that when we met with you 6 months ago.
I'd just like to say it is challenging and frustrating to hear that you want to be part of our process when we feel that you weren't open with us over the last couple of years, and we need to move forward. But I just wanted to throw that out there as sort of an add-on to, I think, maybe what Marilyn said. I heard your pitch about you want to be part of our planning process, and we value your expertise and the services that you've provided for so long. And maybe we just need to get over that ourselves, but it's really hard when we feel like we've been surprised. There's been shareholder advances for quite a while. There's been late 401k contributions for quite a while. There's been a defaulted loan for a while, and so it's hard. It's hard.
Just want to clarify for schedule, you had asked about what our timing is.
right.
Just so, this is a recommendation only coming from this end of the table, but we have until the end of December is our drop dead date to propose something, as we have been discussing, over the past year to make sure any major changes get into the budget process for next year. That's generally, right, Wendy? I mean, we've kind of moved from before the Christmas break to before the New Year break as to when we try to, somewhere in that range is when we submit the operating budget to the budget committee, so. Yeah, so that's, so our finance director from the back of the room says.
Christmas and New Year's, they're the same, aren't
The
they?
sooner the better. So, and I'm saying that as an absolute drop dead date because typically the budget committee starts the first of the year on their meetings. So just so we're all on the same page, My suggestion is we have a very immediate, clear and present problem to deal with, which we're hitting all the high points tonight, and I think you're going to have decide on when you want to address that formally, if that's next week, if it's a week and a half, if it's 4 days, whenever that is. So immediately after that, I think the question is, we have been talking quite a bit internally about evaluating, and it's not about whether we move forward with York Ambulance Association or don't move forward with York Ambulance Association. It's if we are contributing $500,000-$600,000 a year in the budget process. If our solid waste budget goes up by $200,000 a year, it's a crisis at the budget committee, and we have to figure out what to cut to make up that difference, right? We're talking about $600,000. We are going to have demands from our budget committee, from the public, just that we've done our due diligence. So it's not a very real possibility, and probably the most real possibility is that we move forward with York Ambulance Association, but we do need to just make sure we've looked at all the bases, the opportunities, and there's a lot of permutations about what that relationship looks like. So it's a little bit of a complicated question, but there's not really a ton of ways that it plays out. Right, we want an ambulance. For the short term, the recommendation is to move forward at whatever it takes to secure their existence through the fiscal year so that we can at least have the discussion about the long term. So I just want to be clear with everyone at the table, there's not a push that we're moving away from York Ambulance, but we need to do that due diligence internally. So the public has been asking us that question. We've been getting write-ins, questions in person, just how do we know this is a good expenditure? So.
So when we get down to a number, we talking about numbers? So Wendy's analysis, thank you, Wendy, for all this work. And the $350,000 number, I'd like us to talk about maybe lowering that by the $55,000 that is in there for a new ambulance. Seems to me like we should be supporting the operational side of the equation. And to the extent that new ambulances are needed, which I'm sure they are, I think that's probably going to be part of our capital plan, whether we're with York Ambulance or whether we bring it all in-house. And I think that's a separate conversation we should have around capital. And they are talking about grant funding. I mean, I wouldn't discourage them from continuing to do whatever grant funding you're trying to do to do that. But I'd like to talk about pulling that out of the number.
Is that the $5,600 a month?
Yeah. So it's 10 months, $56,100.
Maria?
My inquiry on that issue is, how many ambulances are currently in existence? What are the year or years of them? Like, if it's a 30-year-old ambulance and they need it, then we should probably keep it included. So I don't have the knowledge on the vehicle or vehicles and what you're looking at to replace or add to.
So we currently have 3 ambulances in service, the oldest being a 2016, and then 2019 and a 2021. So the oldest is coming up on 10 years old now. The newest is 4 or 5 years old.
So in the perfect world, you would plan for a new ambulance just in replacement, like I might plan for a new vehicle myself. Is it in your view, we can go with Mr. Palmer's recommendation of holding off on that and having that for a future discussion? This current ambulance will serve the town of York for the next year.
My only concern would be increased maintenance costs on the current vehicles. So they are getting up there in mileage. Most of them are around 100,000 miles. They are currently running in good working condition, but we cannot foresee how long they're going to last additionally. Getting 7 years out of an ambulance is unheard of in most places. So we have some that we've stretched out. I just took one out of service that was 16 years old. So we stretch our ambulances out as long as we can. I think we could get by if we were to defer an ambulance and wait a year for a potential grant.
Thank you for that info.
Yes? Oh, go ahead. Just real quick follow-up. When you stopped providing service in South Berwick and Rollingsford, did any of the vehicles that you were using there come with you?
Yes,
Here?
yes, 2 of them did.
So 2 of the 3?
Yep,
So previously, when you were serving all 3 towns, you also had 3 ambulances?
we had 2 in York and 2 in South Berwick.
2 in South Berwick, okay.
Correct.
And now
Correct.
now you've got 3.
Yes, so we have 4 total. There's one that's out of service mechanically. That is our oldest truck in the fleet. I was able to replace that truck with one of the trucks we brought back from South Berwick. That is still an old 2016 vehicle.
Thanks.
Marilyn?
I just want to go back to a couple of things that is still disturbing to me. I'm sorry, it's a report that I want to just point out. The board member loans that were found that's admixed in between all of these, and that it seems as if they weren't documented to a point where you could trace them appropriately. Am I making that the wrong word to use? Wendy, I'm sorry. I just want to make sure I'm not missing something.
They were documented. The practice was to loan and immediately cut a check back to the person that loaned the money. And so the checks were being held until cash flow was appropriate for them to be able to cash them. So I was just suggesting that not cutting the check until the cash is actually available, then the note is going to show up on the books.
Was the monies from the members in cash, or was it checks that you could track back?
That I don't know.
They were checks. I can give you copies of every one of them.
I'm just asking. We had Wendy that did
And to be
that, so
clear,
I
it
just
was a
want to make
loan,
sure.
it was a loan from individuals, not a loan to individuals. I think
No,
Wendy's-
I know
okay.
that. I'm just trying to follow documentation, that's all, to make sure that things were documented. Okay, thank you.
Robert?
Can I just ask, again, so the ambulance that you want to buy, the $5,600 a month, so have you committed to buying an ambulance? Is there an entity out there that's selling one to you?
So the ambulance we were planning to purchase is currently sitting in Massachusetts, waiting for us to take delivery. This ambulance was ordered 3 years ago, following what we thought was a capital improvement item from the town. I was informed by a former town head that the vote had passed. So we went ahead, ordered the ambulance. This was 3 years ago. 2 years ago, we discovered that the vote did not go through. So we attempted, the order was supposed to be canceled. It never was by previous administration. So this year, the dealership reached out to me and said, hey, your ambulance is almost ready. So there's an ambulance sitting in Mass with our name on it, ready to go, waiting some form of financing.
And you haven't paid for it at all?
No.
And how much
No.
is the cost of the ambulance?
Roughly $350,000.
Okay. And
So
how long are they going to sit on it and wait for your money?
That I do not know. I'm currently in discussions with the dealer and their management. We are anticipating there may be some sort of penalty for not taking delivery. That could potentially be a 10% penalty. That's historically what it is in the industry. So our goal is to find someone to finance it. But
More
So
new
that's
news.
just why I asked about outstanding liabilities that aren't charted on the chart of accounts, and that may be one, right? $30,000. But I asked a question, and I was told there was nothing.
Well, again, we have not gotten anything from the dealership. I've
Well,
been
you could have
talking
said
to
that
them.
then, but you didn't. That's the, sorry, I'm
So there's
frustrated.
a $350,000 ambulance that the dealer thinks you're buying, and you're trying to find finance for it, and you can't find finance for it.
So far, we have attempted financing through one lender company, a lease purchase option for a 7-year lease. That was the lender that the dealership recommended initially. After that fell through, the dealership is now working with us to find other lender options.
Why did that fall through?
It was a smaller lending company, and they looked at the same numbers you guys are seeing, and were concerned about our cash flow.
Yeah. I mean, I imagine that's going to be true.
Yep.
When you said it's got York on it, does it physically have York on it? So is the part of the penalty so that they have to take off the paint job or the stickers and sell it to somebody else and put their town name on it? I mean, is that kind of the thought process
Potentially, yeah.
behind?
Yeah.
That it's to the point where it physically says York on it?
Correct.
So if I could speak up, I'm sorry to cut you off. I just wanted, something that our board is mentioning is, I apologize, is that ambulance was secured at the price of an ambulance 3 years ago, and the price has, as I understand, increased substantially. So if the dealer is able to sell it to someone else at a higher price, it mitigates any damages and any 10% that we might or might not owe. So there's that element as well. That
So
it's naturally worth more now than for what we're scheduled to pay for it.
So the penalty might get waived or is contractually not payable if they're able to resell it at a higher price?
We would be, right, legally it would be mitigated. They would mitigate their own potential loss, yeah.
I was going to ask that same question from a different angle, if I could, Mr. Chair, just for a second. If we were to cancel that order, or let's say they sell it to somebody else, or York Ambulance doesn't end up buying that ambulance, then you have to order a new one or buy one on the market, a spec ambulance. Current asking price is in the 400s. It's 420, 450, somewhere in that range.
Probably about 450.
So there's motivation there to get to the question of, is there motivation to buy the current vehicle or not? It's a net savings to do that, or it's less money that you're going to be spending moving forward. The question is just, can your cash flow, is there a way we can swing that so the cash flow supports it so you can actually afford to do so?
Correct. I mean, this ambulance now is being purchased at ambulance prices from 3 years ago when it was ordered. If this order was to be canceled and say we were to receive grant opportunities next year, we would probably end up spending $450,000 for the same vehicle.
And that gap is what Tina just mentioned, would be potentially mitigation for the dealer not suffering any damages from having to turn around and sell
Would you
that.
have to litigate, do you think, to get that?
I would hope not. I mean, if they stand to gain $150,000 more than they would selling it to us, but they have to scrape off some stickers, I'd like to think that the dealer would avail themselves of that opportunity and not worry too much about
But it's
nonprofit
not
York
written in the
Ambulance.
contract, that if they're able to resell, the
That's
penalty is
just
waived?
what the law is in general. You know, under contract law, there's generally an obligation to mitigate damages in most situations, and this is just a very basic, clear contract.
So do you have active grants out there to fund this ambulance? Have you submitted grant applications already?
Yes, so we're in the final phases of a Susan Collins grant to be received for the 27 fiscal year.
So when's that? Is that?
Are we allowed to talk about it? When would that be awarded? So the congressional spending package has $790,000 for York Ambulance in it for the purchase of an ambulance and upgrade of related ambulance equipment. Go ahead.
No. It's just, and when would that, so that hasn't gone through the budgeting process?
It's nearing the finish line at this point. That's why I don't want to say it. I'm like, I mean, I know I've told Peter about it, and it's fairly high confidence, but I hate saying anything out loud about that. She's brought over $1 billion to Maine the last 2 years, so there's high expectation that it will be coming again.
But it would be in the new year. I mean,
We would get it for next fiscal year, correct?
So, I mean, that's somewhat too late for this particular.
Correct. The conundrum.
It could buy the $430,000 ambulance.
And I think that that's the price of an ambulance that we put into that when they were working with us to get it into the bill.
As we, separate from our conversations with these folks, as we think about recommending something to the voters, a special general referendum warrant article would be to utilize fund balance for some amount, whether that's 350, 300, utilize some contingency, whatever that number is. I guess what I would really want to know, perhaps for our next discussion, is the impact on our fund balance. And I know, Wendy, that fiscal year '25 is close to being complete. And of course, fiscal year '26 is not audited at all, but I would hope that Wendy could run us some unaudited, lots of disclaimer numbers to show us what our anticipated fund balance is as of end of fiscal year '26. And then as we consider this recommendation, whether, where that would place us relative to our policy of 14 to 17%. I mean, it matters to me whether we have the capacity within our policy or if we would violate our policy, and if so, how much. So that's some additional internal information that I would be looking for.
Fortunately for the board, Wendy and I had a discussion about that, and I said, hey, Wendy, you know, you did so good with this on short notice. We need you to do a complete audit of the town within 7 days, but no, not quite that drastic. So she's working on it, yep.
So great minds. You read my mind. Thank you.
She knew it was coming, yeah.
Yeah. All right, good.
So we do have other items on our action form on this topic. Do we want to touch on any of those or today, or do we want to move forward for a special board meeting to?
I think the item that has to be kind of talked about is scheduling. If a special referendum is going to go forward, everything else is discretionary on your part.
I guess just to reinforce that the SBA, I mean, I think for us to move forward, we really need to know where the SBA loan is. We really need the documentation on that. And so Wendy can take a look at it. I just think it's critical we get that sooner rather than later. All the information, all the correspondence you've had, so we can figure out what your liability is there.
And even if you've made a catch-up payment, that's,
Yeah, that to me is worthless. I need to know what's going on with the SBA and where they are and where they think where they are in terms of collection. And so we need all that information in the correspondence. Because I think that needs to be buttoned up and have an understanding of what the repayment's going to be moving forward before we commit to giving you money. I mean, we don't want to give you money and then the SBA takes it.
yeah.
Could substantially affect the amount needed as well,
Yeah.
in either direction.
And I'm not sure we can provide you with that answer before you need to make a decision whether or not.
Well, that's going to be a problem then.
Well, I think you're going to have to.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to somewhat depend on the SBA, too.
Don't you, I'm sorry. If you have a loan, don't you have it online where you can go in and pull it down and see what you're owed and what?
I've given Wendy some information, some monthly statements. I don't know if I gave her one monthly statement or several monthly statements, but there's monthly statements there, although we got some correspondence today that I haven't seen yet.
So it's not like you have it online where every loan that you take out is usually now online, that you can go in and print off every single thing?
Yeah, we have it.
Okay.
We have it, but we actually have it in paper form.
So Wendy, you want to, I just saw you put your hand up about the SBA loan. Do you mind coming forward?
Got Wendy up and down.
I have a statement from the SBA dated May 13th, 26, that Armin shared with me. And it says 8 installments are now due from 9/3/25, which was the last payment at this time. Severe default, contact the SBA immediately. And there is a phone number.
So has
There might
anybody
be a-
contacted the phone number?
I've contacted the phone number and really got nowhere with them. Doesn't it, Wendy, do you have that SBA document on you?
I just
Oh, all
provided
right.
that to Robert.
So it's still, the whole thing is still outstanding. Severe default. Eight installments now due.
I imagine they've demanded the whole thing.
Or call them out, you mean?
Yeah.
Total loan
What-
payoff
what-
as of
Maybe
6/8/26 is 152,000.
They're not going to call it unless it remains in default. The question is whether or not we can get it out of default. That's the question, and go back to those monthly payments of $641.
Did you write them a check? But it says that they no longer accept checks.
They accepted our transfer.
Okay, board, next up.
I think we had talked about a meeting a week from today to
Correct.
kind of
Yeah.
start
17th, yep.
start the clock with the 10-day public hearing with the Budget Committee.
Agree.
Do we need to agree on the figure of what we're going to ask the Budget Committee tonight, or no?
Not tonight,
No,
but
Great.
if we
need to
schedule.
start the clock. Set the schedule.
You get to go
But it's going to move fast.
ruminate about it.
Once we set the schedule, it's going to move fast.
We get to process.
Our process is we vote on what amount, a funding question to forward to the Budget Committee. They can change that amount, and they can say yes, or they can say no. They can say yes as you forward it, they can change the amount, or they can say no, and the charter lays out what happens in each of those scenarios. So then you have a final, I would say a formality, but it means something to vote to put it on the warrant after they've agreed to the amount. So you, for a final check, not that I see any situation in this instance where you'd vote no after the Budget Committee voted yes on something, and if they vote no on something, then you can't put it on the ballot, so.
Mr. Chair, I move that the Select Board amend the meeting schedule to add a special meeting on Monday, August 17, at a time to be determined, or did we discuss 4 o'clock?
Well, we had a request from one of the Select Board members who's working that day to Marilyn.
Yes.
To have it in the afternoon, so.
At a time to be mutually
Agreed upon.
agreed upon to consider whether or not to forward a special budget referendum question to the Budget
So
Committee
we'll
for
check,
consideration.
we can check with all of you and
Pull the
figure
members.
out
Do we have a second?
whether 5, 6, 7 works.
Second.
Motion by Marilyn, second by Marilyn. Additional discussion on the motion?
Yeah, I would just say the earlier we know the time frame, the better off for the public.
No, I think he'll probably know tomorrow.
Okay,
You will
Or
know
we
that
can-
tomorrow.
great.
Yeah.
Does anybody have preferences, or maybe we could do 7, 6, 7?
Sure.
Do it right now if that,
Yeah.
Was there a challenge with getting this meeting room?
Yes.
but we can have,
So that's something you'll work on
So
tomorrow
just
as well?
let's just
It
nail it
was-
down tomorrow, and the
yeah.
public will know tomorrow. And
Thank
then
you.
communicate with us and the public.
was it a 7 o'clock meeting that was in here that day? And we could do it from 5 to 7, or 5 to 6:45, right? I think we've already reserved the room.
So we'll figure that out.
Yeah.
Okay. So any additional discussion? Call the vote, Robert?
Yes.
Marilyn?
Yes.
Marla?
Yes.
Mary Ann?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, 5-0. Okay, thank you. Robert?
So just to the town manager, I mean, so if we go through this whole process and it's on the ballot in November, that's all well and good. But it would also be nice to have a conversation around what happens if the voters vote no. What is it the town's gonna, what is it we can do? I don't expect you to respond right now, but maybe at that next Monday meeting, we could just, some idea of worst-case scenario, what happens.
So that's a 30-second answer. If you want to hear it now, it's not going to change between now and next week. We have the money that if they don't vote yes, and York Ambulance doesn't miraculously find a way other than having several $100,000 to stay open. So I think it's fair to assume, based on the cash flow, at some point they would hit 0. we have money that's appropriated that through the end of the fiscal year for ambulance service. It's not a YAA contract that's in the ballot, it's ambulance. It's a line item that says ambulance, X dollars. We have to spend, and we have our existing Article 6, which is the fire hydrants, fire, and ambulance line. That's what we have to spend on providing ambulance service. So it's pretty dire. Now, I'm not trying to make it sound scary. It would be a substantial change. We have the money that's in the fire department line, but we don't really have the assets that York Ambulance has and the background. I mean, we have the ability, our staff have the ability. That's what we've got to work with. So,
Well, I got that part. I just, maybe in a little more detail.
Were you thinking financially or were you thinking functionally?
Both. I mean, I think the voters will vote yay, but I'm a natural pessimist.
I mean, there are drastic measures that we could take to have one or both of the fire departments reconfigure their operations to run ambulance, but that we then have no money or assets to do fire protection or whatever we take out of
Could we
fire
just stop
protection.
paying for hydrants? Would that make it work?
Well, I'll let you ask that question in the water district. I'm sure
Sort of
they,
counterintuitive.
they would really appreciate that. Again, that's several
We got a
$100,000.
tanker.
That's not even what we're talking about with the ambulance district. So with the ambulance association, sorry. So
And to clarify the vote, just, well, it's fresh in my brain, the recommendations from Finance Director Anderson, those 6 bullet points, would that be part of the article, or is that something that the voters would just vote on the monies, and we ourselves as a select board would determine the conditions? Okay.
yeah, I do think there's going to be some, the second one that you said is the way that it would work technically, but there are going to be questions on a lot of those items from the budget committee.
And Marla and I met with the leadership of the budget committee. I think we talked about that at our last meeting. And they asked a lot of these questions that were asked here, and there's probably questions that we didn't even think of that they're going to ask.
And Josh was at the meeting with me. He knows some of the questions we were getting were conditions, or how do we guarantee this, or how do we guarantee that? So-
Governance.
Right, so the budget, so while you don't need to make that, answer any of those questions with a hard answer between now and, the next couple weeks, the budget committee holds a public hearing on this, and they may, as a result of that public hearing and their vote, they may have conditions
They
or
could build
requests.
conditions they could build conditions into the warrant article, sure.
Maybe, yeah.
They could.
So it's not your expectation that next Monday we'd come up with a draft of what oh, it is? Okay.
With the essentially with the dollar amount of, and the conditions.
conditions.
I mean, I don't think we would put those in a warrant article, but we would.
No, but I mean,
a
we come
separate
up with
document.
like a memo of understanding. We're going to fund you at this amount per month, with the expectation that you, the ambulance, are doing this, and this. Is that your understanding?
And subject to
Yeah.
both.
Yeah.
I'm envisioning, this isn't the only way it could be done, but I'm envisioning an MOU or a modification to the existing contract.
Yeah.
Which is what we do with other agencies in town.
In addition to providing this additional funds, we are asking for these things. You could structure it that way. That would provide some certainty to the voters that this is what's being proposed. So that's something that the voters could look at and say, okay, the town is asking the ambulance association for this in exchange for $350,000 or whatever that number ends up being. We wouldn't sign that until after.
Sort of like, that's the stuff that goes in the voter guide?
Yep.
As opposed to what goes
That's a
in
good way
the
to,
actual.
that's a good way to think about it, yeah.
What is
Do
that?
that too.
So we could commit to that. We wouldn't, of course, sign any binding documents until we knew we had the money in hand, but you could certainly telegraph to the public and to anybody that wants to know what you are intending to do with that money if it's granted to the town, or if the voters approve it.
While providing then any needed flexibility. Because what we know today might be different than the situation in November, right? So I think that's another thing to
You have
think
to-
about
you
is
have to
not
build in
locking
buffers in
ourselves
there.
in
Yeah.
next Monday to something where the world might change even before the vote.
And I think it's very important for the Ambulance Association here tonight to know that we need that SBA information by Friday when we get our packets and such, and so there is a deadline for that.
And maybe the contract and commitment you have for the ambulance is sitting on a lot for 3 years. Wasn't a 3-year build window now is available? What does that contract say? I'm sure that with either the manager or the finance director. And any penalties that may occur as a result
Yeah,
of that.
the more information we have, the better served everybody is.
Anything else on this topic?
Pass that to Peter.
So, Harbor Board budget?
Mr. Chair, I move that the fiscal year 27 Harbor Board budget be approved as presented by the Harbor Board Chair at the July 27th, 2026 Select Board meeting.
Second.
Motion by Marla, second by Marilyn. Any discussion on the motion? Call the vote. Robert?
Yes.
Marilyn?
Yes.
Marla?
Yes.
Marianne?
I did have a question, but yes. It's all right.
You want me to declare my vote? You good?
You're good.
Chair votes yes, 5-0. New business, board and committee actions. We have one appointment.
Mr. Chair, I move to appoint Crystal Tenney as a regular member of the Planning Board with a term expiring on June 30, 2029.
Second.
Motion by Marla, seconded by Marilyn to appoint Crystal Tenney to the full-term member of the planning board. Any discussion on the motion? Call the vote. Robert?
Yes.
Marilyn?
Yes.
Marla?
Yes.
Marianne?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Motion carries 5-0. And for the record, Crystal Tenney is still in the audience.
Oh, yeah.
J2, update on emergency action plan.
So this actually, and ironically enough, is not connected to our previous discussion with the Ambulance Association, but it has to do with them. It is adding, it is subject to guidance that has been issued statewide from Maine EMS. It is adding language into the emergency operation plan, specifically identifying who will be providing the service, the ambulance services in the town. So new legislation, new requirements, so we need to update the plan. It's just a coincidence that all the other discussions are happening with the ambulance at the same time. It doesn't, two are not connected in any way, shape, or form.
Marla?
I just have a quick question. On the record of changes sheet, which is the first page after the request for action, under part affected, it says organization and assignment of responsibilities, page 22, but the actual change we're talking about here is on page 23. And I imagine maybe she was just referencing the
The header.
first page of that section, but the addition of emergency medical services representative is on page 23. So
Okay.
I guess I would leave that to you, Nicole, to decide if that should be
You got it.
changed. That's
So what you're saying is the second bullet down is what's added to what currently exists. Thank you.
Anyone else? Motion?
I move to adopt the Town of York Emergency Operations Plan as amended.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion by Marilyn, second by Robert. Any discussion? Any call vote? Robert?
Yes.
Marilyn?
Yes.
Marla?
Yes.
Marianne?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, 5-0. Motion carries. Future agendas?
Just noticing now, I see. So she's watching at home, so I'm sure she appreciates just realizing that she's not here. Yep, so future agenda, so a meeting, I should pull up the, hold on one second. So I am anticipating, if we're going on the current schedule, you will need 4 meetings in August, potentially 5, depending if you want to meet with the budget committee or not at the special meeting, the public hearing that they would hold. So the next meeting would be next week, Monday, the 17th, specific issue only on the ambulance. We didn't, yeah, I won't get into all that. So that specific only on the ambulance stabilization funding. If you pass a question at that agenda, that would put a special budget committee hearing 10 days out from that. So you have your regular meeting on the 24th, and potentially another meeting following that, possibly on the 31st, because you would have to vote after the budget committee votes if something is going to go on the ballot. So I apologize, there's no way around that. You're going to need 2 special meetings to get this on the ballot. It's just the condition of the charter. Okay, so other items that we have. All right, so August, the end of August, we likely have updates on Ocean Avenue and Cliff Walk, and the Long Beach Avenue seawall. So all 3 of those projects, so Nicole on 2 of those projects, Dean Lassard on one of those projects coming in for updates, and some significant milestones on the 2 seawall projects. We'll have a warrant in front of you with the ordinances that you've made on the 24th. Warrant in front of you, draft warrant to review with the ordinance amendments. So we now have several ordinance amendments going forward and a potential special budget referendum question.
Plus the citizens petition.
Yep, that's one of the ordinance amendments, yep.
Yeah, so that gets it up to 4, yeah.
Yep, so you've got 4 in total, right? 3 that we just worked on tonight and then a 4th. And that's it for for big items on the 24th.
Can I ask regarding Marla's just question? Have we had a public hearing on that citizens petition?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And,
Long time ago, and we voted to move it to the ballot.
okay, and I wasn't sure where we were going to be with a committee of 3
They
and.
did it.
We've done it, yep.
So nothing needs to occur after the committee of 3?
No, there's one minor change that Mary is recommending the language on that, so she's got 2 weeks now to get it to us, but is now the time for, or should we talk about that? Might as well, it's coming. So one of the issues that Mary brought up is that the citizen petitions ordinance calls for the budget committee to make some calls on bonded items, just the way it's structured. Nothing of ill intent, just the way that it was organized by the petitioners. The charter currently calls for that. That is a purview of the select board. So Mary's suggestion is there's nothing that obviously we can do after something's petitioned, it goes forward. She can't change the intent of that, but her recommendation, unless something changes, and when she writes this memo, her recommendation is that, well, it has to go forward, right? So it's going forward, it's on the ballot. Her recommendation is if it passes, that she advises the board, and I agree with her on this, that the board put forward an amendment to change that from, to that ordinance voluntarily, to change that from budget committee to select board. You don't have to do that. The alternative could be if the board didn't want to do that, that you could say, well, the petitioners have to put a petition forward to do it. But I think her thought and my thought is if it's supported by the public, it's kind of indicative that the public wants us to go forward. So that minor correction we should make voluntarily. So it's a recommendation, but it would
But the
not.
status right now is that it is, as written, it's inconsistent with our charter, so it would be unable to be implemented.
Correct. So she would recommend that if it passes, that we make that change so it is implementable.
I guess my inquiry is based on where we're having a special meeting in a week, whether we needed to squeeze in a public hearing on something that might have been changed. So,
That is
Thank you.
all, yeah, you do nothing on that moving forward, it goes forward, so.
Any other future agenda items? Other business?
Citizens forum, right?
Citizens forum number 2? Yes, sir.
I'm David Brinkman from York Beach. It seems unreasonable to me that the Ambulance Association faces such a large percentage of calls for which they can't bill anything. And I suggest it would be wise for someone, either them, you, some part of the town, to go through the calls that they have historically been getting that they can't charge for, and make a triage of them, figure out which ones could have or should have been handled by the YCSA, which ones could have or should be referred by the Ambulance Association to authorized private for-profit provisions of services for old people who make a business of helping old people stay in their homes. And for the third segment, for the Ambulance Association to establish a price list of what they will provide a service for, and perhaps some of it will wind up being uncollectible, but certainly some people can afford to pay for someone to help them get back in their wheelchair if that's what they needed. I mean, our air conditioner system went out on Friday and we had to call and have somebody come and fix it. It isn't somebody that would do that kind of thing for nothing. I mean, it's a service that is provided for somebody other than somebody who loves you, needs to have some economics attached to it. So they should not be letting all that go to waste. They need to be recovering that, or we need to be recovering it by that kind of a triage that I suggest. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anyone else, Citizens Forum? Peter?
Citizens Forum write-in, mid-meeting. Janalee Moquin from York writes, I wanted to be there in person tonight to announce the following, but since I wasn't able to, I'll put this info in for the second Citizens Forum. Thanks. The Festival of Fostering Trees is excited to announce that this year's event will once again be held at Foster's Clam Bakes and Catering. After thoughtful discussions, we have a new plan that we're confident in executing for our 17th festival. We are moving forward with this incredible, family-friendly, heartwarming, and beloved event with the express goal of bringing the magic to everyone who attends. We understand that there were disappointments toward the end of the festival last year, but with your help and cooperation, we'll do our very best to ensure that everyone who participates in any manner will be able to enjoy themselves immensely. We will utilize our Facebook page and email list exclusively for all advertising updates and direct communication in order to provide you with accurate information. We've also launched a brand new website, www.festivalofffosteringtrees.com. Looks like it's spelled as it sounds. Which is currently under construction but can be utilized to subscribe to our email list. We look forward to welcoming you back once again or for the very first time, and are confident you'll feel a true sense of community. Official dates, times, tree registration, and volunteer information to follow. Please note, we are committed to providing an outstanding event for everyone to enjoy, and will utilize this year's experience to guide our decision regarding the future of the festival. Stay tuned for more info.
Our motion to adjourn? Meeting adjourned at